Hello, hello, hello. Well, this is the least organised I've been in a while. Literally, oh, what a mess. Hang on. Let's use a pair of socks to clean that. Hello. So, literally, just as I was about to start the countdown for the video, for the live stream, some things arrived in the post. Just tiny things. Basically, some of the missing bits of Lego for my little robot set. So basically, they're supposed to have these little rocket boosters and handle, control lever things for this set, and they just arrived. So rather than knowing I was on the 6 minute countdown, knowing I still needed to get changed, knowing I still needed to print out my chapters that I want to work on today, what did I do? I built the Lego and then ran around like an idiot trying to find my shirt. And yeah, so totally unorganised, disorganised as usual. But there we go. But I'm here now. The paperwork is printing upstairs. And I'm just going to quickly... I've been doing like... instead of putting test up on the screen, I've been doing something else, and I've got to the point now where I need to look something up before I can do it, which is pathetic, isn't it? Oh, come on. No, not there, not there, no. God. Oh, here we go. Right, so in a moment I'm just going to send a test message on here, but I've been doing a specific pattern of things. So let me just... This will probably be the biggest clue as to what I've been doing. So, right, back on track. So, oh, I've got somebody watching. Hello. So I'm going to stick on the stream manager. Instead of putting just a message saying test up on the screen, I'm going to put some lyrics. There we go. Does anybody watching know what those lyrics are? I bought you drinks, I bought you flowers, I read your books and talked for hours. Every day, so many drinks, such pretty flowers. So tell me, what have I done to deserve this? That should be read you books. So let me do it as it's performed. I bought you drinks, I bought you flowers, I read your books and talked for hours. Every day, so many drinks, such pretty flowers. So tell me, what have I done to deserve this? Anyway. So what am I doing today? Hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be signing off the last two chapters of the second draft of Empress of the Trees. Now, the second draft isn't finished at this point. It's kind of like version 1, because what I will do today, later, is then upload it in PDF book format to probably KDP, but possibly Lulu. One of the ones that will send it me back as a physical book. And then I will read that physical book with a pen and paper, making minor alterations. And it should be minor alterations at this point. If I'm making large alterations, then the draft isn't anywhere near ready to send to people. But I suspect, given my experiences with, because I did the same with Empress of the Trees when I signed it off a couple of months ago. Sorry, not with Empress of the Trees. This is Empress of the Trees. I did the same when I signed Still Life off a couple of months ago. I produced myself a physical copy and went through it and found just a handful of little things I felt I needed to change. But yeah, that's pretty good. So literally, now what has annoyed me somewhat, I actually printed off chapters 42 and 43 yesterday. And then this morning, just before I started this, I started skimming through the text. And I remember there's a moment in chapter 43 which felt like it needed setting up. So there's a little bit where Ronnie tells Adrian she loves him. And there's a little comment that it's the first time she said it. And I thought, well, that kind of feels like it's come out of nowhere. So it needs a qualifier. It needs something to be said beforehand so that, the reader understands the significance of that little moment. I'm just going to open that because the kitchen is a better view than my dirty door. So that I added in. And then had to it became apparent then I read when I read 43, when she actually does say it, it's repeated that she's never said it before. So I kind of felt, well, I need to change that as well. So I'm just going to now nip upstairs and grab those prints. Let me also get my setup on here because I haven't done any of that. Let's just make sure my remote operations centre thingy is working. Don't want to disconnect to the WebSocket. I do want to disconnect because I want to connect to the current one. There we go. Right, bear with me a brief moment. Sorry about that. Technically, that was Lego's fault. Sorry. 6 people watching me apologise via a text message. Hello, everybody. Right, now I have the last 2 chapters of the book in my hands, and I'm going to find a pen. Like I say, Lego interrupted me. Because this kit is meant to basically fit... Oh, it doesn't matter. Stop it. Let's just find a pen and crack on. I had a tidy. Hang on. Right. So that was literally the worst organised opener I've ever done. So let's crack on with reading chapter 42. And I've just realised there's something I need to add into this moment, even though it's pretty much there. There's still a little moment I need to add, so I shall when I find it appropriate. Chapter 42, Ever After. Ronnie woke, reached across to the other side of the double bed and found it empty. Oh God, it was the previous chapter I need to add that thing to that I was on about. Chapter 41. I just need to add a welcome to New London kind of thing. And I need to add that into this as well. There we go. Okay. Anyway. Right, let's get back to what I was doing before. Adrian woke, reached across the other side of the double bed and found it empty. It was still warm, so Adrian had only just left. Let's just minimise that as well. Oh, hello. No, not new layout, just me making mistakes. I don't know when you sent that message, but anyway. She lay her head back into the pillows and smiled. She could hear that he was doing something in the room next door, probably topping up the stove with logs, although they would not be here tonight, so he would not be adding as many as usual. The bedroom had lacked the feminine touch when she had first come here just over 5 months ago. Since then, she had arranged a wardrobe and a chest of drawers. On top of the chest of drawers, I don't know why I've just put chest, was a vase filled with wild flowers that she had picked yesterday. 3 pencil drawings of similar flowers. Similar blossoms, just to reduce the use of the word flowers. 3 pencils of similar blossoms were pinned to the wall. Ronnie sighed. The chest of drawers would soon have to be moved, and there would be nowhere for the vase. There would be nowhere in the bedroom. In the bedroom. Nowhere for the vase to go in the bedroom. The sounds from the adjacent rooms stopped. The adjoining door opened, and Adrian peered through. When he saw she was awake, a broad grin crossed his face. "Good morning, beautiful," he said as he walked into the room. He had not yet dressed and was wearing only the shorts he slept in. Ronnie liked it when he said nice things about how she looked, partly because she knew that he meant it, and partly because at the moment she felt fat and unattractive. She glanced down at her stomach, which was starting to protrude. It had been larger, she reflected, when she gained weight for her very first interface, but she still did not like what she saw in the mirror every morning. What Adrian looked like, on the other hand, always took her breath away. The manual labour that their new life had forced him into had built up the muscles in his tanned arms, legs and torso. He had not cut his hair since she'd been here, so it was almost down to his shoulders. He was... to be honest, I did assume that would be the case, but that's no problem. As I say, I won't go. We'll do it at some point this month, and I'll we'll do it on a Monday ideally, because I don't really want to go at the weekend when there's horrible children running around. But yeah, no, that's fine. I will probably do something else tomorrow then, because I'm thinking, yeah, got my mind racing. Maybe even today actually. All right, mentally I'll come back to that. He had not cut his hair since she'd been here, so it was almost down to his shoulders. He was energetic and caring and beautiful, and his sweetness and charm were irresistibly wrapped in his reassuringly soft Yukunda glow, although that was fading now. Not because he was no longer what Idrisil would describe as someone with a good soul, far from it. Ursula had explained to her that she no longer needed the ability to identify Yukunda, and as such, that ability would fade with time. Adrian lifted the covers and slid into the bed beside her. His mouth went straight to hers, and he ran his hand along the curve of her stomach. Ronnie closed her eyes and, after a few moments, felt a warm kiss on her belly. Adrian was saying hello to their daughter, as he did every morning. She waited until his face was close to hers again, then smiled at him. "Are you ready for the trip?" Problem is, doctors are over prescribing antibiotics, not so much in this country, to be fair, but in some countries they don't care. I mean, I know people who live here who have doctors in Europe who will prescribe them and send it through the post, stuff that they won't prescribe here. So antibiotics won't be as effective now, and it's got nothing to do with how much you've used them. It's got to do with how much resistance they've got to the viruses have got to antibiotics, which isn't down to how much you use them or even how people in this country use them. It's down to the fact that they've been overused globally. But don't worry, it's fine. That's why I said a couple of days ago maybe we should give it a miss, because I had a feeling you weren't going to be right. So yeah, but that's fine. As I say, what I'll do is, well, you've got me thinking now, because I might go away tonight somewhere, not Sherwood Forest, don't worry, I won't do that. I might do my Northumberland thing if I can find somewhere to stay tonight, once I've got this signed off, because then I can be back on Thursday in time for my annoying router to be fitted on Friday, which I really wish I'd booked for next week now. She waited until his face was close to hers again, and then smiled at him. "Are you ready for the trip?" "Yes," said Adrian. "Reuben is covering for me in the fields, and Mr. Shaw says we'll be releasing 2 more farmers when we're down there anyway." Teams were still regularly travelling south of the border to release people. The number of village residents had almost doubled since Ronnie had come out of hibernation, and in a couple of weeks' time residents would start to occupy the second village. Some from the first were moving across, so it was not populated purely by new people. It was going to take a couple of years before it had retrieved all of those in hibernation up and down the country and filled all 3 villages, but it still felt like things were changing almost every day. The expedition this week was to Mansfield. A while back, Ronnie had asked Idrisil if her friend Laura from university could be one of those saved, and Idrisil had agreed. Ronnie wanted to be there when Laura was revived and was going down with the recovery team. Adrian was going with her, as was Marianne for a much-needed change of scenery, as well as Ursula and Carruthers. Adrian smiled and stretched, then his hand found hers under the sheets. He squeezed it gently. "Have you got to the bottom of why Ursula is coming with us?" Ronnie shook her head. "No, she insists she just wants to collect something from her cottage, but I get the sense she's not telling us the whole truth." "Oh, well, her prerogative, I suppose," said Adrian. "Now, do you want to sit at the table for breakfast, or shall I bring it in here?" "How cold is it out there?" asked Ronnie. Instead of answering, Adrian took her hand and placed it on his thigh. Unlike his hands, his legs felt really cold. She shrieked and shook her head. "In bed, please." Adrian nodded. It snowed overnight. Depending on the state of the roads, we may even have to wait a couple of days before venturing south. He leapt out of bed and dashed into the other room, closing the door behind him to keep the warmth in. Adrian blew a kiss in Adrian's direction, then lay back contentedly. The last few months had been educational but lovely. Adrian was attentive and caring. She knew their meeting had been blind chance, but she was grateful for it nonetheless. Both of them were still a little concerned about Marianne. Ronnie's emergence from hibernation had helped their friend a lot. The closeness that they had enjoyed at Forest Lodge steadily grew here, and Marianne's confidence to be themselves was improving. They had renamed the bakery Marianne's and asked everyone to stop calling them Mark. Most complied, and now they dressed the way... Hang on, that's badly worded. That's better. They now dressed the way they had before, and their hair was growing back. It was almost as long as Adrian's. Now, they were still somewhat subdued compared to the person they'd been before the extinction, which everyone called it, despite the fact it wasn't accurate. They were still somewhat subdued compared to the person they'd been before the extinction, which everyone called it, despite the fact that it wasn't truly accurate. But Ronnie put that down to worry about Mackenzie. In 5 months, they'd been given no further information about him. He was still in hibernation, and the trees said that they had not been willing or able to communicate with him at all. See, that kind of is contradicted by something I do later. Everyone was concerned, and Marianne was taking it badly. Oh, well, let's just see how it plays out. I might better stick in an explanation in a minute. The door opened and Adrian came with a tray containing toast and fruit and a pitcher of water. He set it down on the bed and they sat together eating. Toast without butter was something Ronnie had never liked before. Toast without spread, because she's a vegan, was something Ronnie never liked before. But now she had no choice. It would be years before the dairy opened. And she doubted a dairy-free alternative would be a priority. That makes sense. But now she had no choice. It would be years before the dairy opened, and she doubted a dairy-free alternative would be a priority. They'd just finished when there was a knock at the front door. Adrian motioned to Ronnie to stay in bed, then grabbed a pair of trousers and a shirt from the floor, pulled them on, and dashed into the other room. He opened the front door to find Marianne waiting outside, hopping from foot to foot in the cold. It was early November and there was a fresh layer of snow on the ground. They nodded when they saw him. "Can I please come in?" Adrian looked down at them. "Of course you can, but there's a toll. I'll have to have a hug." Marianne looked up at him with stern eyes, then the merest glimpse of a smile crossed their face. They leaned over to him. Having heard the voice, Ronnie had left the bed, put on a dressing gown, and walked into the living room to see them embracing. "Adrian, will you please accost Marianne with a bloody door closed?" she yelled. Adrian apologised, dragged Marianne in, and slammed the door. Adrian strode over to them, kissed their cheek, then embraced them. "Can I get you anything?" asked Adrian as Marianne joined them at the dining table. "Have you had breakfast yet?" "I'm okay, thanks," said Marianne with a nod. "I need to tell you something. I can't come with you to Sherwood." "Oh." Adrian and Ronnie looked disappointed as they sat on adjacent chairs at the dining table, facing Marianne. "The tree in the arboretum has informed us that Mackenzie is going to be released from his hibernation, finally. And there's still..." Typo. "And there's still been no proper contact with him?" asked Ronnie. Man shook their head. "I am prepared for what might happen," they said. "Hopefully he'll be okay, but I'm ready for the worst. If he dies, it's going to hurt a lot. But I've accepted that it's possible, even likely." They smiled bravely. Ronnie frowned. "We can't all go to Sherwood then. Someone needs to be here with you." Marion shook their head. "I knew you would say that. Honestly, I'll be okay. I found out yesterday that Claire's hibernation is going to end on the same day. It's been suggested that, if anything bad happens to Mackenzie, I can be her integration partner instead of his, which is very sensible. She'll keep me occupied until you both get back." Adrian shook his head. "It feels wrong," he said finally, "to leave you now." "I have to go," stated Ronnie. "I must be there when Laura comes out of hibernation. Ursula says she needs to visit her cottage, and we don't seem to be able to separate her from Crothers these days." "I could stay," suggested Adrian. Ronnie stood up from a chair and stood behind him with her arms around his torso. "I was going to suggest that," she said, kissing the top of his head. "Do you mind?" Adrian was halfway through saying, "Of course I don't mind," when Marianne shook their head and interrupted. "No, you'll be back in a few days. I've psyched myself up for the worst, and Claire is an absolute darling. I got to know her quite well those last days at the Arboretum. I'll be okay." Ronnie walked around the table and took the hand. "I know you mean what you say, Marianne, but please don't try to be too brave. If something has happened to Mackenzie, it's going to hurt." She squeezed her hand. "We need to look after you if you have a setback. and losing him would be a major one. Especially now you seem to be finding it. Especially now you seem to be finding yourself again doesn't fit in the context of that sentence, and I've kind of already established that, so that can go. She squeezed her hand. We need to look after you for a setback, and losing him would be a major one. Marion shook their head. I will feel better when my hair... Oh, that kind of needs to be there. That kind of needs to be there for the next sentence to make sense. We need to look after you if you have a setback. Losing will be a major one. Especially... Is that better? I know what you mean. I know you mean what you say, Marianne, but please don't try to be too brave. If something has happened to Mackenzie, it's going to hurt. She squeezed her hand. Losing him would be a major setback for you, especially now. Oh. Losing him would be a major setback for you, especially now you seem to be finding your place here. Your place here. Marianne shook their head. I will feel better when my hair grows back fully. But yes, I think I am. Ronnie walked around the table and took their hand. I know you mean what you say, Marianne, but please don't try to be too brave. If something has, italicise the has happened to Mackenzie, it's going to hurt. She squeezed their hand. Losing him would be a major setback for you. And I would hate to see that. That makes more sense. Especially now you seem to be finding your place here. Marianne doesn't need to shake their head. Let's just... Losing the major setback for you, and I would hate to see that, especially now you seem to be finding your place here. Yes, I think I'm getting there. I'll feel more like me when my hair grows fully back. Adrian laughed. Suits you more than the buzz cut. There you go, finally. Ronnie's eyes widened. They had a buzz cut, she asked, looking to Adrian for confirmation. He nodded. You never told me that. Marianne rolled her eyes. Yes, I shaved it all off. It went from halfway down my back to looking and feeling like sandpaper. It was a bit of a shock, said Adrian. It was a mistake, stated Marianne. I was in a bad place. I don't like the idea of you being alone when Mackenzie is released. I still don't like him, said Ronnie. I won't be alone. I'm staying with Kendra and Vishram tonight until whatever happens, happens. Maybe beyond that if it's bad news. They smiled. Honestly, it's covered. I'll be fine. Once Marianne left, Ronnie packed a bag for herself and Adrian that covered them for the few days they would be away, and they walked together into the village. It was Thursday, market day, and the small space was busting with stalls containing food, clothing, second-hand books, and anything else people... It says needed, I put might need. Might need. There was no money in this new world. It had been a deliberate choice to try and prevent the accumulation of wealth. People took strictly what they needed and no more, which was hard, especially for newer people, to get their heads around. Revivification expeditions always left from and arrived back at Oakley Hall, and today was no exception. The coach they used was kept in a barn on one of the farms, and it was currently being loaded with supplies for the 5 days it was predicted they would need to be away. This included clothing for the newcomers to wear as soon as they were released from their hibernation, and cases for them to... Now... and space for belongings. This included claim for the higher newcomers to wear as soon as they were released, and space to store the belongings they would need for their new lives. That's better. It's included clothing for the newcomers to wear as soon as they were released, and space to store the belongings they would need for their new lives. Most people were hibernating close to their homes, but where there could very well be corpses of loved ones, so the team going south included those whose job it was to get the bodies out of sight before the new arrival collected their belongings. It was one of the responsibilities that Adrian had taken on before Ronnie had been revived. The initial plan had been to get everyone up to the Cairngorms with their possessions well before the extinction took place. These would be stored in the vast underground warehouses that made up part of the Alpha site as the individuals hibernated in a tree somewhere nearby in the national park. Survivors would still have been revived at a slow rate. Infrastructure had to be in place before the numbers grew, but these expeditions south had not been part of the original plan, although the contingency had been catered for. Oliver Shaw and his team had been meticulous in their planning, trying to have a strategy for all eventualities, including this one. Oliver Shaw was heading their team today. Apart from Ronnie and her friends, there were a total of 12 men and women on the coach, since there were 20 people due to be revived from the Mansfield area. Each team member, as well as performing their tasks on the expedition, would work as an integration partner to 2 of the newly arrived. Some of them would have known it was coming because there had been time to brief them before Scald dragged them into hibernation, but of the men and women they were retrieving today, half of them had no idea at all. Laura, Ronnie's friend from university, fell into that category. Carruthers swore as he lugged his and Ursula's case into the market square, and the coach driver, a grim-faced man from Newcastle called Clive, helped him load the bags into the lower storage bays, next to the one Adrian had just handed over from him and Ronnie. Carruthers helped Ursula up the steps, noticing that Ronnie and Adrian had not boarded yet. "What are you waiting for?" he demanded. "Marianne's coming to see us off," replied Ronnie. Carruthers shrugged and followed Ursula up the steps. A few moments later, Marianne and Kendra Brierley entered the market square and made a beeline for the coach. "Good luck," said Marianne as she embraced Ronnie. She looked across to Adrian, who was helping Clive load bags into the storage compartment on the coach. "Have you told your gorgeous man how you feel about him yet?" Ronnie smirked. "No, those 3 words feel really laden with responsibility and permanence." "So you don't see him as a permanent part of your life, then?" Ronnie rolled her eyes, smiled, and put her hands to her protruding stomach. "Of course I do." "Then why don't you tell him? I don't want to scare him." Marianne shook their head. "He's clearly in love with you." "He's never said the words." I might put "he's never said the words" either. Marianne grinned. "He probably doesn't freak you out in the way you think it will freak him out." The mirth left their face. "If Mackenzie makes it past the next couple of days, I'm going to tell him. I need him to understand, even if it's not what he wants to hear." "I'm sure that won't be a problem," replied Ronnie. "Do you know exactly when he'll come out of hibernation?" Kendra joined them. She'd overheard the end of the conversation. Marianne looked over to her. "We don't think it will be today," said Kendra. "Tomorrow or Saturday, most likely." Ronnie squeezed Marianne again. "I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm sure it will be okay." She was not sure she was telling the truth, but it was what Marianne needed to hear. "We will radio when we know anything," replied Kendra. "You won't have to wait until you get back." "Thank you," said Adrian. He put his arms around Marianne and put his forehead to hers. "Look after yourself," he whispered, before pulling away and kissing Kendra on the cheek. Then he helped Ronnie up the coach steps. The journey was due to last at least 10 hours, for at least 10 hours. Oh, that's just reminded me. I forgot to put Discord on. So, as usual, if anybody would like to have a natter with me, know about my social media or anything like that, scan the QR code on the screen. One of those is an invitation to join my Twitch server, and at the bottom of the list of things on my server are voice channels, and the Twitch streams live is open. And hang on, I just have a post I expect. Hang on. Hi there again. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, as I was saying, so if anybody would like to actually talk to me, just scan the QR code, join the Twitch server, and there is in the voice channels at the bottom, there is now a live audio channel open called Twitch Streams Live. The downside is that if you do speak to me, it will be on here, so you need to be sure you're happy to do that. Now, what's just arrived is definitely a Lego set, which I'm not going to build now. Now this is something I hadn't decided until recently that I was going to do. So, classic space Lego men. I will do the reading again in a minute. But I'm obsessed. So classic space Lego men look like, let me just get him, this chap here. So their uniforms are all one colour. That's not a good example because it's yellow, but like that as well. So that's what the classic space Lego man looks like. Now in 1987, they introduced a new range. It was like the second phase of space Lego. And I hadn't decided whether I was going to try and collect that or not. I've just dropped my Spaceman, excuse me. Spaceman, I always wanted you to go into Spaceman, not on the floor. Oh dear. Where's he gone? I'm going to regret that. Where are you, horrible little sod? Oh, how can I have a lot of... Oh, he's bounced into the corner. Hang on. Oh, this is going to require... Hang on, I'm going to have to move the table. Got a nice tracking shot there. Come here, you horrible little sod. Right, well, that was worth all that messing about to show you, wasn't it? As I was saying, up until 1987, Space Lego men looked like this. Right. And then in 1987, they kind of relaunched the range. So it'd been kind of consistent in its look for 9 years. And then in 1987, they decided to make the Space Lego men look like this. Similar, but not the same. Ugh. Now, I much prefer the original look. And I kind of promised myself I wasn't going to collect into the secondary phase with these little chaps. It appears that I lied, because the problem is the actual toys look very, very similar. They fit in with the classic Space Lego range. They've just got these god-awful, almost possibly Star Trek movie-inspired uniforms with a silly zip down the middle. Because you'd want a zip when you're in outer space, wouldn't you? You'd want a zip so you could accidentally knock it and die of asphyxiation because you knocked the zip. But there we go. So that's that. But as I say, the models look exactly like they fit into that set. So there's a very good chance I am going to buy them. The only reason I bought that one was somebody I'd bought stuff from before offered it to me at a very good price. I mean, you can pay 20, 30 quid for sets like this at the moment, and I paid 11 for it. So, yeah. Anyway, shut up waffling on about Lego is what you're obviously internally saying. So let's crack on with this reading. The journey was due to last at least, I was going to put a 4 in there, wasn't I? It was just 4 at least 10 hours. The drive took them down via the Alpha site where they would fill the coach with fuel, and at some point on the trip they would have to visit another fuel dump, a strategically placed fuel tanker, on this occasion near Penrith. The road out of Scotland had been traversed many times by the various revivification expeditions, so they knew there were no challenges there. The road was clear right down to the border just north of Carlisle. The very first expedition, which Adrian had been on, felt like a trek into the unknown, but in most cases the roads had been clear. They'd needed to winch a few vehicles and trees out of the way, but the coach was fitted with equipment to do just that, so it had not been a problem. They still had to remove the occasional fallen tree, even on the roads they'd previously used. They set off at just after 7 o'clock. The morning sun was bright and frost covered the ground, so Clive drove carefully. Things that people used to take for granted before the extinction, such as gritting the roads, no longer happened. Oliver Shaw was Clive's relief driver, and when they got down to Glasgow, which took about 5 hours, they swapped over. The original estimated arrival time had been 5 o'clock in the evening, but about 4 hours into the drive, Clive told everyone that this was looking rather optimistic. The decision was eventually made to stop for the night at Penrith. The kit in the coach included tents with sleeping bags. The 2 men who were responsible for erecting them did so quickly, ably assisted by Adrian, since this had also been one of his tasks when he had been on the team. They set up 5 tents in a semicircle away from the coach and cooked some beans and other tinned foods over an open fire before going to sleep. They were up again at first light, the tents were packed away and the journey continued. The road after Penrith was the first time they'd not been on a relatively straight path so far on the journey, and Clive had been keen not to drive this road after dark. The A66 linked to the M6 that they'd been on. The A66 linked the M6 they'd been on. Now that's badly worded. I'm going to just slightly change that. The A66 links the M6 they'd been on to the A1 that they wanted to get to. Once on the A1, the road was a 3-lane highway most of the way down to Mansfield. The last 10 miles or so were new to all of them, but the road was in good condition. I'm just going to say once off the motorway. Once off the motorway, the last 10 miles or so were new to all of them, but the road was in good condition. There was one point when they had to carefully manoeuvre around an articulated lorry that had crashed into a wall, but they managed it without incident or resorting to the winch. Clive stopped the coach in a supermarket car park close to Mansfield town centre, which brought lots of memories back for Ronnie, because she had purchased her groceries here a number of times in her student days. There had been civil unrest before the oxygen ran out. Most of the windows were smashed, and the shelves that they could see from outside had been emptied from the outside. The team mechanics, Paul and India, scouted the local area for cars that they could get started. Then the 5 teams of 2 drove off to find and revive their 4 people. Each team had a radio with them, and the mechanics left a working car for Clive and Oliver Shaw, who could go out to meet the other teams in the event of a problem. It was a rule that nobody should ever be left alone. Adrian and Ronnie got into the car with Carruthers and Ursula. The tree that Laura was hibernating in was on the grounds of Mendell House. From the location the map indicated, Ronnie was certain that the tree in question was an oak to the left of the main entrance to the halls of residence. Adrian started the car, and 10 minutes later they were pulling into the car park. Ronnie felt a shiver as they drove into the familiar place. The grass was overgrown and some weeds were pushing through the tarmac in some of the parking spaces, but it still felt oddly familiar. From her point of view, she'd only been here a year ago. Ronnie directed Adrian to the main entrance, and he parked the car in front of it, pulling on the handbrake. He looked across at Ronnie, who was looking apprehensive. "You don't have to come in, love." Ronnie grimaced. "I do," she said quietly. "We need to put some stuff together for Laura, and you don't know where her room is. It's a bit of a maze in there." Adrian nodded. "OK then, but take me straight there. Don't open any doors that you don't have to." Ronnie nodded. "Would you like us to trigger the young lady's release, dear?" asked Ursula as she stepped out of the back seat of the car. Do you know which tree it is?" Ronnie asked. Carruthers was examining the map. He pointed to the large oak on the side of the building. "I imagine it's that one." "Yes," replied Ronnie as she and Adrian climbed the steps up to Mendell House. "But wait until we're back, please." Part of the kit that had been transferred into the boot of the stolen car was a heavy red battering ram of the type used by the police to break down doors. Ronnie had said that she doubted they would need it, as the front door to Mendell House had never been locked, at least as far as she remembered. She was right, and when she tried the handle it moved. Adrian pushed the door fully open, and an unpleasant smell drifted out at them. Ronnie dry heaved, and Adrian shook his head. "Are you sure you want to come in?" Ronnie's face had gone pale. "Is that smell what I think it is?" Adrian nodded apologetically. "I'm afraid so. Let's get where we need to as quickly as possible. Grab my hand and run, but make sure you're looking where you're treading. If there are any bodies on the route, we'll have to stop whilst I suit up and move them." Adrian gave him a thumbs up, putting on a pretence of bravado. They walked into the entrance lobby and through a second pair of doors. A corridor ran off in both directions. Ronnie grabbed Adrian's hand and led him down the corridor to the right. They came to a set of fire doors, which he cautiously pushed open, and Ronnie turned left. Mercifully, there'd been no bodies thus far, but the smell was getting worse. She continued along the corridor, past one turning to the right, and took the second. She stopped at the third door. "This was Laura's when I was here anyway. It may have changed." Ronnie opened the door carefully and looked into the room. Nothing was familiar. Judging from the state of it, it was now a boy's room. Ronnie backed out, shaking her head. Not this one, then. We can't check them all, but I have a hunch. She directed them to a parallel corridor and pointed to another door. That was Danny's. I can't bear to look in there, but the one opposite was mine. She moved over to the door in question. They would have had to reallocate it when I left, which would have upset Danny. Laura probably offered to take it on to reduce the impact on him. She's lovely like that. She opened the door and peered into the gloomy space. On the table next to the bed, she saw a photograph of Laura and Danny. Bingo, she cried, before emotions crashed over her, and she dashed out of the room. She ran up the corridor and stopped by the entrance to the common room. Adrian stepped out, intending to follow her, but she motioned him away. I just need a moment, she said. That photo on the table, that was Laura with Danny. Adrian nodded with understanding. Sorry, are you? Ronnie nodded emphatically. I'll be fine. I think Laura has a suitcase in her wardrobe. Adrian gestured to her with his thumbs up. I'll find it. I won't be long. Ronnie watched him go back into the room and without thinking opened the door to the common room. The sight made her gag. The room was full of corpses, most of them undressed. She could see bottles of spirits on tables at the side of the room. The smell was appalling, but the decomposition of the bodies was not as advanced as you would expect after 3 years. This is because there was no oxygen for 2 of them, just to explain it. There was one lying down on a mattress that had a familiar tattoo on its lower back. She closed the door again, thinking of the last time she'd seen Erica Yates alive, and threw up on the floor. Adrian was by her side in a moment, holding her hand and stroking her back. She stood fully upright after a few moments. I'm sorry, she said. Adrian grinned ruefully. I did tell you not to look. Ronnie grimaced and held on to him. You did. I'm sorry. He kissed her forehead. Don't apologise. Is that where the smell is coming from? Yeah, there were loads of people in there. Adrian took a hand. Come on, let's get out of here. Hand in hand, they went back the way they'd come. She's doing okay, said Kendra to Marianne. Kendra took one more look at the girl sleeping in the recovery bed. Claire's hair was still very short, but the damage that had been done by the long needles from Carl Tucker's crown had been repaired completely. Claire had been confused when she woke, which was often the way, and they'd boarded from the tree in a small van. Kendra closed the door to the recovery room behind them. Just Mackenzie now, said Marianne. Kendra patted her shoulder. Are you ready? Marianne shook their head. No. I'll go and hand over to the recovery nurse. Then we'd better get back to the Arboretum. As she was about to walk away, Marianne tapped her shoulder. Kendra turned. In the event that... Marianne faltered. Kendra took the hand, and they continued, finding it hard to say the words. If he's not with us, what will happen? Kendra swallowed. We'll still bring him here. If he's breathing but unresponsive, ultimately the medical council will have to make a difficult decision. You'll kill him. Kendra squeezed Marianne's hand. Euthanasia is a strong likelihood, I'm afraid. Under those circumstances, I think it would be the kindest thing to do. Marianne nodded. If that happens, I want to be there. I want to hold his hand. Kendra turned away. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, love. I'll see you outside. Marianne shook their head and headed towards the exit of the waiting vehicle. The van pulled up in the car park next to the east doors that led through to the Arboretum. I think I've often capitalised Arboretum, so let's give it that last little honour of giving it a capital. The canvas dome that had once completely covered the imprisoned tree has deteriorated enormously. Fungus was growing on the material, and there were lots of holes in the dull grey surface. The recovery team, which consisted of Kendra and one other member of the medical staff, entered through the open airlock door. Kendra held a medical bag, and the male nurse carried a rolled stretcher and another bag. Marianne looked around the interior of the Arboretum. They had been used to artificial lighting in what had previously been such a They had been used to artificial lighting in what had been previously such a sterile space, but there were no lights now. The only illumination came from the holes in the dome, of which there were more than there seemed to be, I think. From the outside. The light was dull, but they did not need the torches they brought with them. They could see a line of fungal growths leading from the holes in the side of the canvas, running along the floor and connecting directly with the tree. It was no random happenstance. The trees on the outside had deliberately attacked the dome and reconnected with their missing individual. I don't like the way that's worded. With their missing... I'm going to say comrade. With their missing comrade. Marianne walked slowly up to the tree. The bark that had been missing from the surface had largely grown back, and the tree had managed to expel the large spikes that had been driven into its surface to connect it to the computer. The surgical bed that both Claire and Mackenzie had once been strapped to was still in the corner, but it was now filthy and covered with mould. I assume that anyone can touch the tree to activate the recovery process? Asked Marianne. They were whispering, as they were standing in a holy space. Yes, replied Kendra, but I think it should be you. Now? Now. Marianne walked slowly up to the surface of the tree, their head filled with memories and emotions. Their pulse increased rapidly, and they took a few deep breaths before raising their right hand and bringing it to the surface. They touched the bark gently and felt something, they were not sure what. The surface did not raise itself around the edges of their fingers as happened when she'd seen Ronnie do it, but they felt a distinct sensation. They took the hand away, it was clean, and took a step back. They all watched the surface of the trunk. At first nothing much seemed to be happening, but then it started to swell. It reminded Marianne of a pregnant stomach. Over a few minutes, the area expanded until it was the size of a person. Then it seemed as though someone rapidly unzipped the middle, and a very skinny, sap-covered figure toppled out. Marianne caught Mackenzie, and Kendra helped them carry him over to the stretcher. Marianne looked down at the figure as Kendra covered his nakedness with a blanket. They could see that his chest was rising and falling slowly. They got on to their knees and took his hand. Mackenzie, they whispered. Can you hear me? Mackenzie's eyes opened wide. He looked terrified. Marianne took his hand gently and squeezed it. He looked up at them, and his breathing slowed somewhat. He smiled, and his head fell back. He closed his eyes, and the grip on Marianne's hand relaxed. Come on, let's get him back, said Kendra. She and the nurse picked up the stretcher and started carrying Mackenzie through the door and towards the van. Marianne took one last look around the arboretum and shook their head. They hoped they would never have to see this terrible place again. Marianne walked alongside the stretcher, watching Mackenzie's unconscious form as they carried him outside. Like Claire, his hair was very short, and Marianne could see that the puncture marks in his skin. Marianne could see. I could see that the puncture marks on his skin from where the crown. Marianne could see that the puncture marks in his skin from... Hang on. What am I trying to say? I thought I was trying to say that he still had the puncture marks. Could see the... tiny puncture marks and skins from where the crown had gone. Yeah, that's what I think I was trying to say. From where the crown had gone. They watched as the medics gently loaded him into the van. The nurse climbed in behind him, and Kendra gestured to Marianne to get into the front passenger seat. He recognised me, said Marianne just as Kendra was about to climb in. He recognised me, said Marianne just as Kendra was about to climb into the driving seat. He definitely recognised me. They paused. That's good, right? It's good, Kendra affirmed with a smile and watched as tears started to roll down Marianne's cheeks. Come on, let's take him home. Adrian and Ronnie left Mendel by the main door, then turned right until they were at the end of the building, Adrian stopping at the car on the way to grab a large sports bag. Ronnie joined Ursula and Carruthers at the oak she'd indicated earlier. Ursula was standing with her eyes closed, but she opened them at the sound of Ronnie's approach. Are you ready, dear? She asked. Ronnie inclined her head, so Ursula stepped forwards and laid a hand on the surface of the tree. A few moments later it bulged, and eventually a form was expelled. Adrian caught the naked, thin, dark-haired girl and walked across to the car, urging everyone else to step away from under the branches. The tree seemed to turn grey a few seconds after its inhabitant was released, but this time... I'm just going to reword that slightly. The tree seemed to grow a few seconds after its inhabitant was released, but its limbs did not collapse. Initially, Laura was unaware of what was happening, but she screamed and kicked out when she realised she had no clothes on. Ronnie opened the sports bag that Adrian had taken from the boot and took a large black dressing gown from it. Adrian set Laura's feet on the ground as Ronnie rushed over to her. Here, Laura, put this on. She handed the robe to the trembling girl, who grabbed it angrily and wrapped it around herself. She then looked up furiously at Ronnie and was about to yell at her when she looked at her face properly for the first time. Her expression turned from one of anger to one of sheer astonishment. Ronnie! But... Ronnie stepped closer, and when she was sure that Laura was not going to swing at her, hugged her. Laura shook her head, stunned, and after a few seconds returned the embrace. What's going on? You're dead. Ronnie shook her head. As you can see, I'm not. Laura took a step back and looked at her again. You're pregnant. Her face paled. Is Danny the father? Adrian looked at her intensely. That was something she was going to have to explain to him, but now was not the time. No, she said, shaking her head. Where am I? Laura looked around her and recognised the car park at Mendel. Oh, where's everyone else? Ronnie took a hand, which was still sticky, and squeezed it. What do you remember? Laura looked wobbly, so Adrian opened the passenger door of their appropriated car, and Ronnie guided her down into the seat. We were all waiting to die. I think I started to hallucinate. Erica came to see me to check that I was okay, and then a tree creature broke into my room and carried me away. It looked like you, Ronnie. Ronnie raised her eyebrows. It did it? What else? I'm not sure, said Laura. Adrian, meanwhile, had opened the boot of the car. I think we've already opened the boot, haven't we? So I'm going to say returned to the boot of the car. And taken a flask out. Drink this, he said. It will replace a lot of your missing nutrients. He twisted the top off and handed it to her. She took a sip. It's very sweet, she said. Before taking another... with a grimace, I think. Before taking another large swig. Then she turned back to Ronnie. I don't know what happened next. I passed out when the thing carried me away. Then some voices spoke to me saying I was safe and someone would come and fetch me when I awoke. She shuddered. I assumed that was either a dream or hallucination too. She looked around her properly for the first time and noticed the overgrown grounds. What happened here? Did they sack the groundskeeper? Ronnie squatted in front of her. You've been hibernating. The sticky stuff all over your body, that's the internal fluid from the tree that you slept in. Laura looked bewildered. Slept in? What? Everyone was dying. I'm so confused. Ronnie squeezed her hand. Almost everyone died, Laura. You're one of the designated survivors. You've been asleep for almost 3 years. What? Ronnie gestured to the greying tree at the edge of the car park. The tree sacrificed itself. I'm going to say that tree. That tree sacrificed itself to save you. I don't understand. The emotion won't caught up with her and she started to cry. I'll explain when you've had a moment, said Ronnie gently. In the meantime, we need to go to your room and pack anything you want to take with you. You won't be staying here. We're going to join a settlement with the rest of the survivors. It's a long way away, I'm afraid, in Scotland. We will leave later today and we'll hopefully get there tomorrow evening. A thought crossed Laura's mind. What happened to Danny? She asked. A mournful look. Again, a mournful look spread across Ronnie's face. That was another detailed conversation that was not for today. He's gone, she said sadly. I'm sorry. I loved him as much as you did. She blinked away tears and wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve. Laura shook her head. I think I knew, she whispered. Adrian knelt next to Ronnie in front of Laura. I'm Adrian. Sorry to push you, but we need to go and get your stuff. It won't be very nice. The smell inside is rather unpleasant. He rested his hand on Ronnie's shoulder and squeezed it. There's nothing awful to see between here and your room. We've already checked. Let's get your things and get you away from here. He held out his hand, and Laura looked to Ronnie for affirmation, who nodded. Laura gripped Adrian's hand, and he helped her to her feet. We'll come with you. He handed her a pair of slippers from the sports bag, which she dropped onto the floor and slipped onto her feet. Then you'll explain what happened, Laura asked. We have a long journey, I'm going to say, ahead of us. We have a long journey ahead of us, said Ronnie. I can tell you anything you want during that. Come on. Laura, her legs stiff from lack of use, hobbled up the stairs to the front door, sandwiched between Ronnie and Adrian. All three entered, and the door swung closed behind them. Ursula smiled after them. One down, she muttered to herself. Eh? What? Crothers asked. Nothing, dear. We'll go to my cottage next. Crothers looked to the floor, then walked over to Ursula and took both of her hands in his. He stared into her eyes. Are you sure about your stupid plan? Ursula smiled. Quite sure, dear. Crothers exhaled and let go of her hands. All right, I'll stop trying to dissuade you. Thank you. There is one thing I need to do first, said Ursula. I need to take Ronnie to her old tree. Then we will come back to the cottage. Adrian and I will make sure there are no unpleasant surprises in there, said Crothers. By the way, Does Ronnie know of your intentions? No, said Ursula quietly. You and Adrian will need to support her afterwards. However, I do have something planned that will mitigate her grief. Great, said Crothers. And what will mitigate mine? He leaned down. He's already holding a hand, isn't he? I've already said that, so let's just... Yeah, so I need to just... Great, said Crothers. And what will mitigate mine? Ursula smiled at him. You'll be fine, Mr. Crothers. Aye, he replied. I bloody well hope so. Laura quickly packed her clothes and personal items into a bag. Ronnie immediately recognised it as... I'm going to say one of Danny's, rather than Danny's. And they returned swiftly to the car. Adrian drove them away from the town along the forest road, the one Ronnie had used every time she cycled to Ursula's. He parked the car in the nearby car park. As they got out, Ronnie walked over to the fence that she had once upon a time chained her bike to and held onto it for a few moments. Adrian joined her, making sure that she was okay, as the others climbed out of the back seat of the car. Laura was wearing her own clothes now, but she still seemed a bit dazed and unsure of what was going on around her. Would you prefer to wait in the car? Adrian asked Laura. He was surprised when Ursula answered. I'm sure she'll be fine, dear, the old lady said. Can I have my bag from the boot? Adrian grabbed the old tartan-wheeled trolley and put it on the ground before her. Where are you going? I have something to show Ronnie, replied Ursula. Laura will come with us too. We have to walk past my cottage on the way, so you boys can check it out for me. We won't be long. You boys, Crothers muttered under his breath. What do you want to show me? Asked Ronnie. Is it far? Not terribly far, dear, no, replied Ursula, as she started walking away from the car park and down the path towards her home. Ronnie followed, taking Laura's hand as she did so. Laura still seemed as though she was in shock. Adrian and Carruthers followed. After a short time, they arrived at the cottage. Adrian walked up to the front door and examined the wood. I think it's been broken into, he said after a few moments. Ronnie frowned. But by who? It must have been before the extinction, replied Ursula. Mr. Vickers, it would be terribly good of you and Mr. Crothers to check it out for me. The girls and I are going for a walk. We should be no longer than 45 minutes. If you're right and the house has been broken into, there might be somebody in there. Alive? Asked Laura, suddenly paying attention and looking around her wild-eyed. Oh, good gracious me, no, said Ursula. She turned to Adrian. I know it's an unpleasant task, but if there are any remains in there, would you remind them and open the windows to get some air in? Adrian nodded. I'll have to go back to the car and get the biohazard stuff. I've only got one set, so Mr. Crothers will have to stay outside if I have to remove any bodies. I see, replied Ursula. Thank you. Come along, girls. She started striving further into the forest. Ronnie looked at her in astonishment. Over the last few months in the Cairngorms, Ursula seemed to be slowing down again, something that had happened once when Ronnie was at university. Then an interface had restored her vigour, but she had not had time to do that since yesterday. Ronnie took Laura's hand and followed Ursula down the familiar path. Marianne was sitting on a chair in one of the white recovery rooms. Mackenzie was lying on the bed, the covers folded neatly over his stomach. His eyes were closed, his arms were at his sides, and he was breathing slowly. His face looked tired. Marianne wasn't used to seeing him with so little hair, and his skin was pale all over. He looked bony and fragile. Marianne found it hard to reconcile the figure before them with the person that they had known. Kendra had visited a couple of times, telling Marianne not to worry and saying that it was not unusual for the freshly released to sleep for several hours. But every time she came into the room, she looked a little more worried, and her words of reassurance sounded a little more hollow. The door opened, and Kendra came in again. Claire is awake and talking now, she said. She went through a similar ordeal, the same injuries, and they hibernated for the same amount of time. She stood next to the second chair by Marianne. A sleep this length is unusual. I'm going to check his vitals again. She folded the linen back on the right-hand side of the bed and carefully checked his pulse. Marianne stood, applied the thermometer to his forehead and played the oxygen saturation monitor on his finger. Finally, Kendra used a sphygm, one of them, to take his blood pressure. She packed it away again when she was done. Nothing unusual, she said thoughtfully. But if I'm honest, I did expect a reaction. Hang on. No, I took his blood pressure. Even if it were just a flinch. I was watching his face, said Marianne. No reaction at all. They sat heavily back down in the chair. He definitely recognised me when he came out, though. It's not a problem yet, said Kendra, choosing her words carefully. Just a little unusual. I'm going to go and see Claire next door. Call me if anything changes. Marianne nodded as Kendra left the room, closing the door behind her. Marianne returned a gaze to Mackenzie, then reached under the sheets until they found his left hand. It felt cool to their touch. "Come back," they whispered. They squeezed his hand and leaned forwards, kissing him gently on the cheek, then pulling their chair closer to the bed so they could remain seated whilst holding his hand. "I need you," they whispered. "I don't know when exactly it became so important to me, but I adored our friendship at Forest Lodge. I wasn't expecting it. When I was changing your sheets, at first I thought you were just a silly kid, but I got to know you. I got to realise how difficult your life has been. I started to look forward to our little interactions, and I know you felt the same. Then, just as I thought we understood each other, you left. You ran away. That really hurt me, Mackenzie." They exhaled slowly. "But you know all of that." Marianne's eyes were red with tears, and they blinked. They leaned over his body, their left arm on his right shoulder, and their lips to his left ear. "I'm struggling, sweetheart. I don't fit in. Nobody's openly hostile, but they don't get me. If you were worried about what people would think of us, in the old world, then here it would be much more intense." Sobbing, they kissed his cheek again. "I don't know if you have the strength for that. I'm not sure even I do." The hand went to his cheek, and they leaned down and kissed him gently on the lips before leaning back and staring at his closed eyes. "I can't do this without you. I don't want to let you go. But if you don't wake, they don't have the resources to help you." They sat upright in the chair and released his hand. "And when I say I can't do this without you, I mean it. Letting go of you will mean that I let me go. Letting go of you will mean that I let me go too." Marianne closed their eyes and was about to allow themselves a sob when a voice interrupted from behind. "What does that mean, let you go?" Marianne jumped and turned round to see Claire had entered the room. In many ways she resembled Mackenzie with the close cropped hair and pale skin. "Nothing," Marianne muttered. "Can I sit with you?" Marianne nodded numbly, and Claire. Just need to put a comma in there. Marianne nodded numbly, and Claire, clad in a dressing gown. Marianne nodded numbly, and Claire, clad in a black dressing gown, took the seat next to them. "I heard most of that." Marianne nodded. Claire took her hand. "Please look at me." Marianne turned her head and looked at Claire. His face was sombre. "You helped me so much. You helped me so much in those awful days when I thought I was going to die," said Claire with a sad smile on her face. "And you also seem to have forgotten that Simon was hugely impressed with you. You're the only reason any of us survived. Simon thinks the world of you. They personally told me to support you if anything happens to the wee laddie here." I'm going to say look after. Personally instructed. After you, if anything happens to the wee laddie here. Marianne stood and was about to speak when they felt their stomach heave. They dashed out of the room with their hands covering their mouth. Claire turned back to Mackenzie and took his hand under the sheet. "Come back, lovely," they said quietly, staring at the linen covering his thin frame. There was a cough from the bed. "Claire," said Mackenzie as he opened his eyes. Claire jumped up and hugged him. "Mackenzie, you okay?" Mackenzie looked up at her and smiled. "Aye, I think so. I heard another voice." "Marianne was here. They've just stepped outside. I'm sure they'll be back in a moment." Mackenzie smiled broadly. "I thought I heard their voice. Are they okay?" Claire shook her head. "They're very worried about you." She smiled down at him. See, I'm getting my pronouns mixed up there because Claire is very much she. She smiled down at him. "You remember the things you told me about how you felt about them? Well, now you need to tell them all of that." "I kind of did," he said. He replied, looking anxious. "Sam will let me speak to them." The door opened and Marianne re-entered the room. Their eyes were red and their face was flushed. They took in the scene before them, agape. "I'll give you a moment," said Claire as she left the room, closing the door behind her. And again, it's a door, not doors. Originally, I was going to have Marianne seeing Claire and Mackenzie together and thinking they've got more in common. They've had this shared experience. Maybe she would be better for him than me, the freak. And I just thought, no, you know what? And I had that going on in their head for quite a while. And then I just thought, you know what? No, let's make it a little bit nicer, a little bit quicker. So that was all going to continue into the next chapter, that Marianne was like, "I think maybe Claire would be better for you than me, blah, 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 blah." And then I thought, no, these guys, they've had enough obstacles. They don't need any more. Anyway, "I'll give you a moment," said Claire as she left the room, closing the door behind her. Mackenzie carefully sat up and swung his legs over the side of the bed. He stepped gingerly down to the floor, wincing slightly as he used muscles that had been dormant for 3 years. He was naked apart from a pair of shorts that Kendra had put him in earlier. He stumbled forwards and hugged Marianne. For a moment they did not respond, then they put their arms around his thin body and returned the embrace. They felt his tiny frame in their arms and the warmth of his body as it was pressed to them, the bones under his skin, his lips on theirs. As they parted, Marianne helped him back to the bed. I need to get a doctor to check you over. Before you do, let me say something. I'm sorry I hurt you in the car that night. I'll stand on a chair with a loud head and tell everybody what I feel if it helps you to believe me. Marianne sat next to him on the bed and pretended to stick their fingers down their throat, a glint of humour in their eyes. What? He asked. We're in a new world now. Being with me could ostracise you. Did Ronnie make it here okay? Yes. What about Ursula and Carruthers? Yes. I don't need lots of people around me, said Mackenzie. I'd rather have a few great friends than lots of mediocre ones. What precisely are you saying? I'm saying I don't give a fuck about what other people think, about you, about us. Marianne grinned. Now you're sounding like Mr. Carruthers. Well, give me 50 years and I'll look like him and all. Marianne laughed. Perish the thought. They stood up. They wanted to tell him they loved him, but now they felt the moment was there, the words stuck in their throat. They thought of Ronnie and her reluctance to say it to Adrian and finally understood. I'll get the doctor. Then I'll tell you all about everything that's happened and about our new world. Mackenzie looked thoughtful. Is there any grub? He asked them. Plenty, said Marianne. Give them a moment. Can you ask Claire to come back in? He asked. I have a message for them from Signwolf. Okay, replied Marianne. They left the room, and a moment later Claire reappeared. Everything all right? She asked. Aye, I think so, said Mackenzie with a grin. I have something I need to ask you. Claire jumped on the bed up to him and hugged him. I'm so glad you're okay. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Mackenzie went red and pulled away slightly. I have a message from Signwolf and Idrisil, he said. They don't want such a big gulf to appear between our people and theirs ever again. He leaned back, his arms behind him supporting his body. They would like a permanent dialogue between us, and as such they require 2 ambassadors. Ronnie is pregnant apparently, so Idrisil decided not to ask her. You impressed Signwolf. He recommended you take her place. It'll be different this time though. Instead of us visiting them, they would want to visit us. They once did it often. They used to walk in the bodies of animals regularly hundreds of years ago. Claire looked unsure. I had Signwolf in my head. I didn't like it very much. Understand, said Mackenzie. I will be hosting Signwolf, so for you it would be Idrisil this time, and it would only be once or twice a year for a day or 2 each time. It could be me and you, and we would coexist with them, so it wouldn't be like last time. They can't, can't make us do anything we don't want to. It was horrible last time, said Claire, shaking her head. Please think about it, said Mackenzie, but remember it is your choice. They won't force you. The door opened and Marianne walked in with a plate piled high with protein-rich food. Behind her was Kendra, looking relieved. Food for you, said Marianne. They saw that Claire was about to jump down from a seat next to Mackenzie on the bed, so they motioned for her to stay. Claire looked at Mackenzie. I don't think I can do what they ask, she said softly, but I have a better suggestion. Her eyes fell on Marianne. There we go. So that's that chapter. Happy with that. A couple of minor alterations, but we're okay. So let's just run it through Grammarly. Oh, it's going to save it to the desktop this time, is it? Lovely. Right. I've got that song in my head, and it's I don't know if you've heard Chaperone's The Giver, and I don't think it's her greatest song. Things like Pink Pony Club and obviously Good Luck Babe are much better, but I now I've got it in my sodding head. Never mind. Right, chapter 42. So what grade are you giving it to me? There's a lot of Scottish people in that. I think that's the only. Is that the only chapter where all 3 of my Scottish characters are in it at the same time? 92. That'll do. Right. So. Punctuation problem. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that sentence, and that is not getting changed at all. So bugger off, Grammarly. Just tell me where my commas aren't. What we do tomorrow instead. So what I'm thinking of doing is I want to go away for like small number of days, and I was going to go on Friday as soon as my router's been fitted. But I kind of feel I'm nearly, I'm not halfway through. I'm about 10 days into my time off and I've done nothing really. I haven't really left the house. I know I have a couple of times. So what I'm thinking I might do is actually, if I can find somewhere to stay tonight, I might book Northumberland tonight and come back Thursday evening. What day is it today? Yeah, Monday. Come back Thursday evening, which will leave me free for my router to be fitted on Friday. Possibly. I mean, it might be too late. I might not be able to find anywhere to stay at this point. Although I did look the other day, because I nearly booked to go away to come back today, forgetting that I was supposed to be seeing my godson on Saturday. So it was literally, I think, Thursday or Friday. I was thinking, I need to do something. I haven't gone away yet. Oh, that's good. And I found a really good deal. It was like 230 quid for somewhere to stay for the like 4 nights, 3 nights, whatever it was. And I was about to book it. I thought, no, no, you're going to see your godson perform on Saturday. You can't do that. So that's a possibility, but I'm going to get this signed off first and then I'll sort of think about that. But that's a possibility. I might drive up to Northumberland this afternoon and evening, quite soon actually, because it's what? God, nearly midday already. Um, This is weird. It's almost like somebody's pressed a switch in Grammarly. So for a while, all it did was say basically my punctuation. I needed to add or remove commas, and then for a while that disappeared, and now it's reappeared again. Oh, semicircle's one word. I assumed it was a hyphenated word. Come back this way. They squeeze his hand, lean forward. I guess that would be kiss him gently. Yay! Right, so that's chapter. As I say, normally when it doesn't pick me up on the commas, that takes a lot less time. And I have a funny feeling now they've decided to pick me up on commas again. When I go back and put the earlier chapters through, when I do the next version of the draft, yeah, never mind. Right, so let's download that edited version, and then we can get on with the final chapter, which I'm quite looking forward to. Right then, so that can go, that can go, and that can be minimised. Right, so that is chapter 42. Done. Now the other thing I did yesterday was I actually, for the first time ever, put all the. If you don't know I'm going away, do you want to meet up for a coffee tomorrow instead? We can, but I suspect I will go away. Because otherwise it won't be till after next week, and yeah. But yes, I will let you know once because it will involve me being extremely organised basically. So as soon as I've done this, I need to get booking and packing and then driving quite soon. So I will let you know as soon as I've decided. Right, let me just paste this onto there. Right, so 365,000 words, not including the final chapter. Huh, stupidly long. Right, let's do this. Let's do the final chapter of Empress. Or let's drag chapter 40 into the edited and open 43. Right then. I will cry at some point during this, just so you're aware. Chapter 43, Hello, Goodbye. Adrian pushed the door of the cottage open gently to reveal a tidy hallway. Damage to the wood around the doorframe suggested it had been forced open at some point. He stepped in. There were closed doors on either side of him. The door at the end of the hall was open. What do you see? Called Carruthers from the porch. Nothing so far, replied Adrian, but the smell is pretty bad. Someone or something died in here. Don't come in. Carruthers nodded from the threshold. Can I do anything? Yes, replied Adrian. There's a biohazard kit in the yellow bag in the back of the car. Can you grab that for me? Aye, replied Carruthers, and turned on his heel and walked through the front garden and onto the path in the direction of the car park. The sickly sweet smell coming from the next room was strong and unpleasant. Adrian walked to the open doorway and peered beyond. The curtains were drawn so there was very little light, but he could see enough to identify the source of the odour. The small living room had a double sofa on the back wall, and on it were two people. From the clothing, one was male and one was female. They'd died together, locked in an embrace, on a small couch. Adrian walked to the back of the room and pulled open the curtains and unlatched the windows, pushing them out to let some fresh air in. He also opened a window on the perpendicular wall. To the right of the entrance was the doorway to a small kitchen. Adrian carefully explored the whole cottage, opening all the doors and windows. The bodies in the living room were the only ones he found. When back at the entrance hall, he peered outside, but Carruthers was not on his way back. Adrian left the cottage using the front door and crossed the garden to examine the outbuildings. There was a shed to the right of the house that had cluttered shelves on all the walls, but a reasonable amount of space on the floor, somewhere he could place the bodies. Carruthers arrived a few minutes later with a yellow bag. When Adrian had first been shown the kit almost a year ago, he had laughed. According to movies he had seen, a biohazard suit covered the entire body and contained a helmet with its own oxygen supply. This was far more basic. Thanks, he said, Carruthers, as he opened the kit. What did you find? Asked the old man. 2 bodies, male and female. I'm going to move them into the shed. Adrian opened the small yellow bag, pulled out and donned a pair of latex gloves, and then put on a blue apron with long sleeves that covered his front. Inside the bag was a face mask that covered his mouth and nose, a hairnet, and a plastic visor. Finally pulled a second pair of gloves over the first, sealing the gap between the apron sleeves and the first pair. Adrian re-entered the living room. The corpses had been cuddling when they died. He assumed it had been whilst they were sleeping, so he had to pull the arms of the woman from around the man before he could lift her. There had been very little oxygen in the atmosphere for the first 2 years after these people died, so decomposition was not that advanced. The skin of the woman was intact, and she still wore earrings. There did not seem to be anything that might identify her in her pockets. He carried her gently out of the house and placed her on the floor of the shed before going back for the man. There was a wallet in his pocket, so Adrian removed it and left it on the writing table at the back of the room. He picked up the body. It was a lot heavier than the woman's had been, and carried it to the shed. He placed the body on the ground next to the other, and then left the shed, closing the door behind him. He removed the first pair of gloves and the visor, and then everything else, stuffing the used contents back into the yellow bag. The man had identification on him, he said. I'm going to take a look. He started walking back to the house. Can I come in? Asked Crothers. If you can stand the smell, responded Adrian. The windows are all open, so it should be less grim by now. Once in the living room, Crothers went straight to the fireplace and used a brush to sweep the grate. Everything he needed to start a fire was either next to the hearth or in the box and coal scuttle at the side, so he started tearing up a newspaper that had been left there for that purpose and rolling it into balls which lay on the grate. Meanwhile, Adrian walked over to the writing desk and retrieved the wallet. Inside was a small amount of cash, some credit and debit cards and a driving licence. He read the details. The man had been called George Metcalfe. Inside one of the other compartments of the wallet was a photograph of George, a woman, presumably the other body had just moved, and a girl, their daughter. Adrian felt his heart rate increase as everything fell into place. Mr. Carruthers, come and take a look at this. Carruthers had been laying kindling wood onto the paper, but he stood up and joined Adrian at the writing desk. He took the photograph and studied it. Oh my, was his only response. He looked at the writing desk and pointed at a pile of notebooks and pads next to a pencil case. On top of them was an envelope with "To our beautiful daughter Ronnie" written on it. Did you see that? Not until you pointed it out, replied Adrian honestly. He was about to pick up the envelope, but Carruthers grabbed his hand. No, leave it for her. She might get some comfort in knowing they were the last people to touch it. Adrian nodded. I didn't think of that, he confessed. What should we do now? What do you usually do if you find a body? Move them so they won't cause the person we've just released any distress. Then leave them. We don't have time to bury them. Crothers nodded slowly. Aye. And do you think that will be enough? For her? Adrian shook his head. You're right. There's a spade in the shed. If there's more than one, I can help. Adrian raised his hand and squeezed Crothers' shoulder. Thank you. We should get started. I don't know how long it'll be before they're back. Even though Ursula had shown signs of her former vigour as the three women started their walk into the woods, it was clear now that she was slowing down. Every few minutes she had to take a pause for breath as they walked deeper into the forest. Are you okay? Asked Ronnie on the first occasion this happened. Of course I am, dear, replied Ursula with a smile. I've simply not been as active since the extinction, so charging about like this is taking it out of me, rather. Whatever we're going to see, said Ronnie, why don't you just tell us about it? Surely you don't need to show us. It's not something I can tell, replied Ursula, straightening up and moving along again. Laura followed without saying a word. She had not said anything since before they had left the car. As they progressed, Ronnie started to realise that the condition of the trees they were passing was worsening. At first, she noticed the occasional trunk that did not look all that healthy. Then they came to one that was completely dead, twisted and grey, not unlike the oak tree after it had released Laura. What's happened here? Asked Laura. Why are so many of the trees dead? All will become clear, said Ursula with a twinkle in her eye. They stopped again for a few moments to allow her to catch her breath. They were in a small clearing, and around them more than half of the trees were showing signs of the kind of distress that Ronnie had noticed a few minutes ago. Whatever caused it is getting worse, observed Laura. She looked around her and shivered. Are you sure it's safe? Ursula nodded. The deeper we get, the more evidence of this there will be. Some of the trees further on may have lost some limbs, but we have already passed through the area where there is the most danger. What do you mean? Asked Laura. At the centre of this area of dead and dying trees will be what is causing it. The deeper we get, the longer the trees will have been desiccated, replied Ursula. The danger was at the outer edge. Those are the ones that have recently started losing their vigour. Those are the ones that have the greatest chance of collapsing. You could have warned us, muttered Laura under her breath. Ronnie frowned. I suppose the chance of being there at the precise moment something falls off is rather remote, she said. Quite right, dear, said Ursula before she straightened up and continued to walk. Ronnie offered to take a bag for her, but Ursula declined with a wave. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the trees became greyer and more deformed. Soon they were walking through row after row of dead grey trees. Some of the bigger ones had lost their larger limbs, and they occasionally had to tread carefully through them or navigate the path around some of the larger fallen branches. After 2 minor detours, Ursula took another short break. Don't worry, she said. We'll soon be there. Ronnie looked around her. I think I've worked out where you're taking us, she said after a few moments. Have you? Asked Ursula with a gleam in her eye. Yes, so replied Ronnie. My question is why? I saw my tree destroyed. Carl Tucker and his minions cut it down and set fire to it. And in doing so murdered Danny, she thought to herself. She did not say this out loud, though. She had not told Laura about Danny's fate. Laura had accepted that he, along with almost everyone else she'd ever known, was dead. There was no point distressing the girl with the gory details. They set off again. We are almost there, said Ursula. A few minutes later they rounded a corner and entered a small glade. The sight made both Laura and Ronnie gasp. Surrounded by death, the glade was an oasis of life. On the ground was Ronnie's yew tree. It lay where it had fallen 3 years ago, but in intervening time, something had happened. It was covered with moss, mushrooms and fungal growths, and new shoots were rising from the damaged trunk. The largest one was taller than Ronnie was, and spouting limbs and leaves of its own. Surrounding the tree on the ground were weeds and flowers that grew in abundance for about a metre around its circumference. It was like a beacon of colour in an ocean of grey. "Do you understand now?" asked Ursula, with a smile on her face. "I think so," said Ronnie. Laura looked glum. "Then can you explain it to me?" Ronnie nodded. "This was the tree that created me. I was literally born on this spot. Ursula found me here all those years ago." She smiled, her eyes slightly wet. "We have come full circle." Ursula straightened up. "It seems that you understand, and yet you don't, dear. Ronnie, go and touch the tree." Ronnie frowned. "Why?" "You will see." Ronnie looked at her puzzled, and then realisation crossed her. She'd looked at Ursula as tears started streaming down her face. "No," she cried. "It's not possible." Ursula smiled. "It is Idrisil's final gift to you. A small way of saying thank you." Laura looked as Ronnie almost totally broke down, crying loudly with tears streaming from her eyes. "What's happening?" she asked, confused. "It is a gift for you as well, my dear," said Ursula. "One of you needs to touch the tree." Yeah, it was upsetting me this bit. Ronnie wiped the tears from her face and walked over to Laura, grabbing her hand. "Come on, Laura, we should do this together." The girls walked hand in hand until they were standing at the end of the fallen tree. "Touch with me, Laura. Don't ask why. Just do it." Confused, Laura lifted her hand at the same time as Ronnie. They both took hold of the tallest new sapling rooted in the remains of the old tree. Something seemed to happen on the surface on the opposite end, and Ronnie stepped back, Laura in tow. The perpendicular trunk started to swell. Ronnie smiled. "We need to be round there," she said, pointing at the swelling and dragging Laura around to the other side. Ursula followed them carefully. The small ocean of flowers that surrounded the tree seemed first to lose their colour, then wither and die. The bulge along the length of the yew was meanwhile getting larger, and finally the section split, and a naked body rolled out. The tree turned grey almost immediately. Laura looked in astonishment at the body lying on the ground. Ronnie grabbed the wheelie bag that Ursula was offering her and rushed over to the figure. He was male with dark hair. He was also thin. Everyone was thin after being released from hibernation. But unlike Ronnie's interfaces, not to the point of starvation. She knelt by the body and watched the chest rise and fall as it started to take breaths. She unzipped the bag that Ursula had given her. Inside was a blanket, some thermal underwear, a tracksuit and a coat. Remember, it's November and very cold. The figure opened his eyes and looked across the person kneeling in front of him. He smiled. "Ronnie." He tried to sit up. Ronnie lost all her composure and threw herself at him. She kissed his cheeks and hugged him tightly. "Danny," she cried, tears of happiness falling from her eyes. "Oh my God, Danny!" Laura was standing as though she was glued to the spot. She was shaking and also starting to cry. "Laura, come here," Ronnie called to her. Danny looked up and saw Laura for the first time. His eyes closed and he burst into tears as well. He tried to stand, but his muscles momentarily let him down as he fell back. "Laura," he said breathlessly, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Ronnie stood and led a still-shot Laura over to him. She placed the blanket over his naked body as Laura finally moved autonomously, kneeling beside him. Her hands went to his shoulders and her mouth to his. Ronnie stepped back next to Ursula. She carefully hugged the old lady. "Thank you so much," she whispered into her ear. "I've only recently found out that it had been successful, dear," said Ursula. "I did not want to tell you until I was certain. And then when I found out that you were coming this way, it seemed kinder to show you rather than tell you, especially when I realised that Laura was going to be here too." Laura had seen the contents of Ursula's bag and was helping Danny into the clothing. He put the coat on over the top of all the other items, and they both walked over to Ursula and Ronnie. He put his arms around them and hugged them, weeping silently. "I thought I was dead," he cried. "When those men ran the sword through me, I felt my body dying. I knew it was all over." Laura stared at him open-mouthed. Ronnie grabbed her hand. "We will explain everything." Danny smiled, let go of Ursula and Ronnie, and hugged Laura again. "I understand what has happened," he said quietly. "To the world. Idris explained this whilst I was sleeping. I know there are very few of us left." Ronnie smiled. "I have a lot to tell you. I need to introduce you to Adrian." She patted her stomach and Danny's eyes widened. It was the first time that he had noticed her condition. "Is he?" A panicked expression crossed Danny's face, but did not know how to finish the sentence. Ronnie nodded. "He is," she said. "And there are some other very good friends I can't wait to introduce you to. Adrian is at Ursula's cottage with Mr. Carruthers, and I can't wait for you to meet Marianne. You'll adore them." Laura had her arms around Danny still. "Can you walk okay?" he asked. "I think so," he said, taking a few steps. How far do we have to go? My cottage is just over a mile away, said Ursula, but we do not have to rush. There is one more thing I need to do when we get there. Whatever it is, it won't be as wonderful as this, declared Ronnie. Ursula watched the others leave the glade ahead of her, with a mournful look on her face. I think I might lose the with there, actually. As I said, I'm changing almost nothing. I have a feeling this is almost exactly how I want it to be. A mournful look on her face. No, dear, I don't think it will be. With that, she carefully followed Ronnie, Laura and Danny out of the glade in the direction of her home. Having eaten several large plates of food, Mackenzie was lying on the bed, dozing. Claire had returned to her room, and Marianne left the medical facility on a personal errand. They returned later that afternoon and sat next to the bed containing the sleeping Mackenzie. Eventually, he awoke. He glanced around the room, and his eyes fell on Marianne. He immediately smiled. "Morning," he said with a grin. "Are you okay?" "I am," said Marianne. "I have something I want to ask you." "Aye, so have I," replied Mackenzie. "You can go first if you want." Marianne looked nervous. "It's about living arrangements," they replied. "I live behind the mill at the bakery. There's a small room above it. It's all I've needed." "That sounds great," said Mackenzie. "It's okay," replied Marianne. "It can get windy up there at times, and when the gale gets up, it's quite dangerous getting down the hill, so it can be stuck up there for a day or two." "I don't mind," replied Mackenzie. "I want you to be nearer to other people," said Marianne. "I've avoided contact, to be honest, apart from my friends, and they usually come to me. I'm not sure my living arrangements will be good for you." "Honestly, I don't mind," said Mackenzie with a smile. "You need to be around people." Marianne dropped her eyes. "And so do I. I've asked the resource planners if we can have somewhere in the village. It would be better for you, and it would probably be better for me as well, loath as I am to admit it. There is somewhere we can have in a few weeks, but it's in New Edinburgh." Mackenzie shook his head. "I don't understand." "Sorry." Marianne sat upright. "We're in New London, the largest of the three villages. It's currently the one that's inhabited. We're about to move some people across into New Edinburgh. Some people from here, and some people from here, and some of the people are due to be released from hibernation will start to occupy the new village. The home we've been offered is there." "Sounds odd, eh?" said Mackenzie. Then a thought hit him. "How far away is it?" "About 5 miles," said Marianne. "There is a path between the villages that has been cleared that's suitable for small vehicles such as bicycles, horses and carts in the future when we have them. But life is going to be busy and we won't get to move between the villages all that often." "And where are our friends going to be?" "They'll be here in New London." Marianne looked tense. "Is that okay?" Mackenzie smiled. "So the choice is live with you in a small flat that's occasionally isolated by bad weather, or live with you in a new village?" "Yes," replied Marianne, "but away from Ronnie and the others." They suddenly went red. "I'm so sorry. I was assumed you wanted us to live together. It's not. If that's not what you want, then of course we don't have to." Mackenzie nodded his understanding. "Honestly, as long as I'm with you, I don't care," he said, his face turning crimson. "The flat's a pretty poky little place," said Marianne. "We'll be under each other's skin. From what you said earlier, I think it would be better for you to be near to Ronnie, not in the next village." "There may be opportunities to return to New London later," replied Marianne. "There will be people moving around in the future, especially when we open up New Birmingham. It might not be forever." "I think it would be better for your mental health to be near your friends." "Okay," said Marianne with a smile. "Thank you." They took his hand and leaned down so their faces were inches apart. "I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better." Their face flushed a little, and they kissed him. "Much, much better," they said, as they paused to take a breath, touching the lips they'd just been kissing with their fingers before walking them down from his mouth and down his chest. All the time they watched him carefully, ready to stop immediately if he looked uncomfortable. Their fingers stopped walking just below his belly button, and then Marianne sat up, removing their hand. "Is that okay?" Mackenzie giggled. "Of course." Marianne exhaled with relief. "Sorry, I was worried about asking you. What did you want to ask?" "I've been asked by Simwolf to continue my role as ambassador between us and the trees. It won't be the same. They will occupy my body a couple of times a year and walk among us. I won't simply be a message anymore. I'll be a host." Marianne frowned. "Are you okay with that?" "Yes," replied Mackenzie, "because I won't just be a passenger when I take on Simwolf. We will coexist." But they were going to ask Ronnie too, but Idrisel decided that, with her forthcoming motherhood, it would not be fair to ask her. I asked Claire, but she said no. She made a suggestion which I know Simwolf will approve of. "We want to ask you." Marianne frowned. "Me? Why?" Mackenzie swung his legs out of the bed and stepped out. Marianne stood and stared at him. "Because Simwolf thinks you're amazing. You offered to sacrifice yourself to save me. I won't ever forget that." I think I might reword that. They won't ever forget that. And neither will I. He grinned and gave him a shy kiss on the cheek. Can I think about it? Asked Marianne. Of course, replied Mackenzie. He put his forehead against theirs and wrapped his arms around them. I'll support whatever you decide, but I like the idea that we share the experience. We could help each other through it, said Marianne. They kissed Mackenzie tenderly, and at that moment Kendra entered the room. Sorry, she said, and was about to leave. No, wait, said Marianne with a giggle. I was just going to say that I'm happy for Mackenzie to go home, said Kendra. Swing by tomorrow afternoon for a check-up, though, please. That's great, said Mackenzie. We have some clothes for you to wear now, said Kendra. Usually people we've revived have their own stuff with them, but you and Claire got here under different circumstances. We have a limited clothing store at the Alpha site. Someone will take you down there tomorrow after your check-up. Kendra smiled. I'll get the clothes brought in. Other than that, I'll leave you to it. Kendra left the room. Mackenzie smiled, then sat down. He looked thoughtful and somewhat worried. Are you okay? Sorry, are you okay? Asked Marianne. I'm a bit nervous, he admitted. I really want to be with you, but I've never... His face went red and he looked straight into their eyes. Marianne smiled. I know. You told me before, remember? We won't rush into anything. We won't do anything you don't want to. I do want to, he said with a nervous smile. Marianne hugged him close. In a way, it'll be a first for me as well. Mackenzie looked puzzled. I've never actually wanted to live with anyone before. I've always been one of a pair of ships that passed in the night. They grinned. This is the first time I've wanted to drop anchor. The smile left Mackenzie's face and he frowned. So what happens if I'm not enough? For you, I mean. Marianne frowned. I don't understand. Well, I'm not experienced in life or anything else, and you might end up thinking I'm, well, boring. This is my head. That's the kind of thing I think all the time. Marianne shook her head. The world has changed, and so have I. I've had a long time to think about things. The days of clubbing and drunken one-night stands. I don't think I want to leave that in. The days of clubbing and one-night stands. I'm going to lose that. The world has changed and so have I. I've had a long time to think about things. What I want now is someone who likes me for who and what I am. Someone I trust utterly. That's you. That's why what you said in the car hurt so bloody much. He looked worried. Marianne squeezed his hand. It's all forgiven. It was part of your journey to work out... Not to work out, to be. It was all part of your journey to be who you are. Their face was red, and they exhaled, putting their arms around him. He reciprocated, and they sat, locked in a warm embrace. Oh, nice snogging. Right. Crothers was sitting in a deck chair located in the shed. He had placed it in front of the door and was watching the path. Adrian was at the back of the house, digging. Between them, they decided the hole did not need to be as deep as 6 feet, but it was still a lot. But there was still a lot of digging to do, and quickly. Crothers saw the others approaching from the path and stood. Adrian, he called. They're back, and they've got someone with them. A few seconds later, Adrian emerged from behind the house. He was sweating and dirty and had a frown on his face. He walked up to Ronnie as she approached and embraced her. Then he turned to Laura and Danny, about to question who he was. He knew that he'd seen the face before, but was not sure where. Then it dawned on him. It was Ronnie's friend, and he'd seen him lie... Hang on, I'm just going to rephrase that. It was Ronnie's friend who he'd seen on the live video from Clayton. He'd been absorbed by the tree just after the brutal attempt to kill him. He smiled and reached out his hand. You're Danny, I assume. Ronnie looked over to Ursula and was about to go into her front door when Crothers put his hand gently on her shoulder and looked over to her and Adrian. He'd said something, and she nodded and sat in the deck chair. Danny, meanwhile, was shaking Adrian's hand. Nice to meet you, he said. You too. Look, I need to borrow Ronnie for a moment. Will you and Laura be okay? Danny nodded and Ronnie frowned. What's happened? I need to show you something, said Adrian. Okay, said Ronnie, nonplussed. Did you find anyone in there? Yes, said Adrian carefully. I've moved them so the coast is clear. Come on, follow me. Adrian and Ronnie entered Ursula's living room. With all the windows open, the worst of the smell had gone. Ronnie frowned, and Adrian walked her to the writing desk. She looked at the pile of notebooks and, recognising them, her eyes widened, then fell on the envelope that was resting on top of them. She immediately recognised her father's handwriting. She picked it up gingerly, then looked at Adrian. My parents have been here. Adrian looked sorrowfully at her. I'm afraid so. Ronnie smiled, confused, until what he meant hit her. You mean you found them here? Yes, love. He tried to take her hand, but she pulled it away. Where? She said, her eyes filling with tears. They were together on the sofa. He held out his hands to take hers again, and this time she let him. What have you done with them? She demanded. I put them in the shed. I want to see them. She tried to wrench her hand away, but his grip was iron. I'm not saying you can't, love, but think about it. I'd rather you remember them as they were, than see them as they are now. He swallowed. It's not very nice. Ronnie started sobbing, and he pulled her close, hugging her tightly as she cried into his chest. Can we bury them? She asked, her voice muffled. We can, Adrian replied. Adrian. I'm already working on it. He stroked her back gently and leaned down to kiss her forehead. Thank you, she said between sobs. I'd do anything for you. You know that. She looked up into his face and exhaled. I love you. It was the first time she'd ever said it to him. He smiled and squeezed her gently. I love you too. I have for a long time. She smiled as though a small weight had been lifted from her. I was scared to say it in case I frightened you. He wiped the back of his hand across his reddening eyes. You needn't have been, he said quietly. I knew I was willing to die for you within days of us meeting. She giggled sadly. Well, thank God you didn't. She enjoyed his warm embrace for a few more moments, then looked up at him. I need to tell you something else, Adrian. Something about something that once happened between me and Danny. He chuckled. Oh yeah? She looked embarrassed. Don't worry, he said. I already figured it out. He brushed hair from her face and kissed her. Does Laura know? I've no idea, she replied honestly, but it's not like Danny to keep things from people. So my hunch is yes. She stepped away from him and took a deep breath. I'd like to see my parents now. Her voice was a little on the forceful side, as though she was expecting an argument. Okay, said Adrian. Can I come with you? Please, she whispered. Hand in hand they left the room. Ronnie cried endlessly for the rest of the afternoon. She'd visited the bodies of her parents and soon admitted to Adrian that it had been a mistake. Ursula suggested using bedsheets to wrap them, so when Adrian finished digging, he carefully wrapped George and Annie in white linen and placed them into the hole. They held a simple ceremony with words from Ursula, Danny, and finally Ronnie. They all tossed a handful of soil into the grave, and Adrian set about filling it in properly. The rest retired to the house, where Ursula promptly apologised for the lack of ability to make tea with milk, although she did produce a camping stove from a cupboard and make them black tea using slightly dry leaves. As they drank, Ronnie stood at the back window watching Adrian fill in her parents' grave. Danny tried to talk to her, but she politely turned him away, saying that she wasn't ready and that Laura would appreciate his company. He hugged her and did as he was told. Ursula came and stood by the window. Oh, excuse me, I need to blow my nose. I should have muted the microphone. You probably didn't need to hear the various snottage. Sorry about that. Right, let me come back. Ursula came and stood by the window with her. After she had finished drinking her tea, she gave Carruthers a meaningful nod, and he went over to Danny and Laura and took them from the room. I need to talk to you, dear, said Ursula finally. I understand this will not be a good time for you to hear this, but I have something I must tell you. Ronnie turned to face her. Can we do it later? It's not a good time. I'm so sorry, said Ursula carefully. But there will never be a good time to have the conversation that we're about to have. She paused, and Ronnie turned from the window to look at her. I need to tell you that I will not be returning to New London with you later today. Ronnie frowned. Where will you go? Ursula smiled delicately. I will stay here. But you can't. There's nothing here. How will you live? Ronnie asked. Ursula shook her head but said nothing. Is Mr. Carruthers going to stay here with you? No, dear. Then how will you survive? Cried Ronnie. Ursula looked into her eyes and shook her head, and Ronnie finally understood. No, you can't. Ursula shook her head. I'm old, dear. Much older than I think you realise, and I am tired. I've lived a long and full life. I've achieved much in my many years, and one of my proudest achievements is you. You fulfilled every task that was required of you. You are strong and daring, and none of us would be here today if it were not for you. Ronnie was staring at the floor, and she snatched her hand away angrily. Why now? Why today of all days? I did not know that we would find George and Annie here, Ursula said simply. I just need to add the word Ursula there. My plan was to release Danny and then return to my home. And do what? Tears were streaming down Ronnie's face. And stop, said Ursula. Simple as that. Turn yourself off. Yes, dear. My life has been wonderful, but now it is now time for me to rest. Ronnie scrunched up her eyes. I need you. Ursula. Hello. I'm just doing an emotional bit towards the end of the book, so I'm just going to carry on finishing this, then I'll properly interact. Ursula shook her head gently. You might think you need to. You might think you need to, but you really don't. You have Adrian, who's one of the loveliest men I've ever met. He will never hurt you. And you have Danny and Laura, and Marianne and hopefully Mackenzie. You are good friends with Dr. Brierley and Vishal. Even Mr. Carruthers will be there for you. Unless he decides to switch himself off too, said Ronnie petulantly. He's several decades younger than I am, my dear, said Ursula. Just so you know, he does not agree with my decision either. Good, he's right. But you or he will not change my mind. I am ready to go. Ronnie shook her head and glanced back out of the window. Where the hole had been was now a neat mound, and Adrian was nowhere to be seen. What will happen? Ronnie asked through her tears. You will all go back to the car and leave me here. I will sit in my chair and have a cup of tea, and then I will close my eyes. Alone? Yes, dear. Ronnie shook her head. I don't like the idea of you. Her voice faltered, but she straightened up. Of you dying alone. Ursula smiled gently. I understand that. However, I do not like the idea of you feeling you have to watch me die. But what if something happens? Such as what, dear? Ronnie had no answer for that, and she turned away from the old lady, silently sobbing. A few moments later the door opened, and Adrian entered the room. He walked over to the window, stood behind Ronnie, and put his arms around her, resting his head on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Ronnie. Mr. Crothers has just told me. Ronnie spun round. We can't let her. We need to stop her. Adrian chose his next words very carefully. I don't think it's our place to do that, Ronnie. But she'll die alone. That's awful. Adrian put his hands on her shoulders. It's her choice. Ronnie shook his hands off and ran over to Ursula. Please don't do this, she begged, gesticulating wildly. Ursula looked into her eyes and shook her head sadly. Adrian stood by the window, not sure what to do with himself. Eventually, he approached Ronnie, but she turned on him, her eyes blazing. Back off, Adrian! He raised his hands in a capitulatory stance and stepped back. She's made her decision, he said softly. As sad as it makes us, we have to respect that. Ronnie looked from one to the other, ready to fight, to argue, to make a point. But the realisation she was not going to win slowly crossed her, and she dropped her arms. Can I at least wait with you? Asked Ronnie. I'm sorry, but no, you cannot, said Ursula. She walked over to Ronnie and took her hand. I will always be part of you. She walked over to the notebooks on her writing desk and pulled a plastic bag from one of the drawers with a flourish, putting the books and Ronnie's childhood pencil case into the bag. Don't forget these, dear, she said. It's time for you to leave now. What, right now, this minute? Ronnie cried. Yes, dear. I'm ready. I am ready. She paused. I'm immensely proud of you, Veronica. It has been an honour and a privilege to know you. Ronnie looked... Oh, I've got a raid. Just have to forgive me because I'm on the last few pages of a book I've been working on for 6 years and I'm hopefully about to sign it off. So thank you very much for raiding. I will interact. I just need to finish this. Ronnie looked around at Adrian aghast. He walked over to Ursula, then wrapped his arms around her, giving her an affectionate hug. Take care, Mrs. Baker, he said. He leaned down and kissed her cheek. She smiled and went slightly red. Adrian looked pointedly at Ronnie, who threw her arms around Ursula, hugging her close and crying without abandon. Finally, she looked up. Goodbye, Aurora, Ronnie said formally through her tears. Farewell, my vero Andy, said Ursula with a smile. Eventually, Ronnie let go and walked over to Adrian. Sorry, she mouthed at him. He nodded and took her hand. They left the room. Ronnie stopping just before she closed the door, smiled tearfully and waved at Ursula. Ursula waved back. Ronnie and Adrian stepped out of the house. Crothers had instructed Laura to take Danny to the car. He walked up to Ronnie and took her hand. I'm sorry, he said simply. I tried to talk her out of it, but she's of a singular mind when she's decided something. He gave a small grin. Not unlike someone else I know very well. I think we should return to the car, said Adrian, and get back to the bus. Ronnie shook her head. There's one more thing I need to do, she said. She looked down into the carrier bag. She looked down into the carrier bag that she was clutching in her hands. I need to go for a walk. She looked back at the cottage. Don't worry, I won't go in there. But there is a little thing I need to do. Alone. Adrian looked nervous, but Crothers nodded. Take a radio just in case, he said, handing the unit in his pocket to her. She accepted it and slipped it into her bag. How long will you be? Adrian asked her. Not more than an hour, she replied. Adrian leaned down and kissed her gently. I'll see you in an hour then. She put a hand to his cheek and smiled. Thank you. With that, she turned and started walking deeper into the forest. Ursula went into the kitchen and put the whistling kettle on top of the gas stove. As she boiled the water, she bustled around the kitchen, washing the teacups the others had used. Then she walked to the front door and looked outside to make sure that there was nobody waiting. Finally, she closed the front door, walked through to the kitchen, filled a teapot with leaves and water. I'm going to say the teapot because I don't think she's a multiple teapot kind of lady. Hang on. Filled the teapot with leaves and water, placed it onto a tray, and walked into the living room. There she placed the tray on the small table next to her favourite armchair and lowered herself into it. She poured a cup of tea through a small tea strainer and sipped thoughtfully at it. Once she had finished the cup, she poured another and slowly drank that too. Then she sat back in the chair. She put her arms up on the armrests and closed her eyes. A single tear fell from her left eye, and she moved her right arm to wipe it away. Finally, she put her arm on the armrest and smiled. Ursula's breathing slowed, then stopped. Her head fell to one side, and her glassy, sightless eyes seemed to gaze through the open window and out into the forest. That's another one dead. It took about 15 minutes for Mackenzie and Marianne to walk from the medical centre to the foot of the hill on the outskirts of the village. Mackenzie, keen to prove a point, insisted on holding Marianne's hand as they walked through the village. Mackenzie looked up the hill to the white and black windmill. To the white and black windmill? Is that where you live? He asked in astonishment. Marianne giggled. No, in a building just behind it. Mackenzie looked up at the windmill. The blades were turning in the wind. They're milling today, said Marianne. It's so cool. Can I have a look inside? Of course. It's primarily used to mill the flour I bake the bread with, so I'm there quite often anyway. I can give you a guided tour. That would be grand. He walked through the gate at the base of the hill and Mackenzie stopped. Do you know what this gate is called? Marianne stopped, bemused. A gate? Mackenzie rolled his eyes. Obviously. But do you know what kind? Marianne shook her head. No. It's called a kissing gate, he said shyly. Why is it called that? I don't know, replied Mackenzie, but I do remember when I was little my parents used to take me on a walk, and there was one of these close to the canal. They had a little tradition when they walked through. Let me guess, said Marianne with a smile. They would kiss. Aye, said Mackenzie, his face turning crimson. It used to embarrass me when I was little. I'd like us to start our own tradition. Marianne smiled. You want us to kiss when we walk through this gate together? Aye, every time, even if we're a bit annoyed with each other, to remind us of everything we've overcome to be here. He looked down, then back up at her. Would that be okay? Marianne nodded. I think that'd be wonderful. How does it work? Well, said Mackenzie, you step into that semicircle of fencing. Marianne did as they were told. Then I pull this gate this way, so you can step through. He pulled the gate towards him. As he did so, he leaned forwards and gently kissed him on the lips. Then you step through. I pushed the gate back. Marianne did as they were bid. And when Mackenzie stepped into the semicircular alcove, Marianne pushed the gate away from them, kissing them as they did so. Aye, that's it. They walked up the hill. They walked hand in hand up the hill. A cold breeze was starting to blow, and Marianne hurriedly dragged him towards the buildings. They came to the fence around the windmill and walked around it until the bakery was before them on the other side. Mackenzie stood and took in the view of the loch down the other side of the hill and of the pine trees that were rustling in the wind. Then he turned and pointed to the small room on the second story of the building. Is that where you live? Marianne nodded. It is. What would you like to do? Have a look at the bakery or the house? Mackenzie appeared to consider, then laughed. The house. Great, replied Marianne. I'll get us something to eat. I'm not really hungry, lied Mackenzie. Well, what would you like to do? Mackenzie opened his mouth, but shyness overtook him and he lost the words he was about to say. Understanding, Marianne grabbed his hands and walked him up the steps. They opened the door and Mackenzie stepped inside. They took off their coat, hung it on the back of the door, and then helped Mackenzie out of his. He looked around the small room and his eyes fell on the bed. With a smile, Marianne led him over to it. He noticed they were shaking slightly. Are you nervous? They asked. Aye, he replied. So am I, they replied honestly. But it's just us. The wind picked up and started howling around the small building, but neither of them noticed. Ronnie looked around her spot in the small glade that overlooked the dell. It felt like she'd been here as recently as 6 months ago, but in reality it was more than 3 years. She sat down carefully and pulled the notebooks out of the plastic bag. No, it was a year ago, not 6 months. My maths is wrong. But in reality, it was more than 3. We can lose the... She sat down carefully and pulled the notebooks out of the plastic bag. When she'd been at university, she'd come here 2 or 3 times per week, often at sunset or sunrise. She flicked through the notebooks and was delighted to see that the last book she had used at university was one of the ones that her parents had left for her. She flicked through it until she came to the first blank page. It was opposite the final picture she'd drawn here just before Christmas, of a small puffball mushroom that had been growing in this very glade. She looked down at the exact place she remembered it had been, but there was no sign of it now. She lowered herself down to the tree root that she'd used as a seat, remembering she'd been very overweight when she'd last done so. Her stomach was swollen this time, but for a different reason. She smiled and looked around her. The resources that had been directed to keep Danny alive had reached out as far as here. The tree she was sitting beneath was dead and the soil around her dry with no signs of life. Sighing, she pulled the pencil case out of the bag and found the sharpest pencil. She looked around her once more for inspiration on what to draw, but found nothing. She dropped a hand containing the pencil to the paper and drew a line. It was slightly curved, like the profile of her face. Encouraged, she drew some eyes in the right place relative to the lines. Eyes that were hers, and yet not hers. Smiling sadly, Ronnie started to draw a picture of Ursula as the low sun descended further, gradually making its way towards the horizon of their new world. Excuse me. The end. Sorry. I think it's a combination of the emotion of actually getting this bloody thing finished and obviously what's happening in it. So, hello to all the raiders. Sorry about that. I've been working on that since November 2019. I had a long break during the pandemic because it's about the end of the world and that felt a little bit too close to home during some points. And I seriously picked it up again in January 23. I edited the 32 chapters I'd written at that point, and then since then I've written another 11, finished it off. And then this is the second draft, so I've been through it a second time. And yeah, that's where I'm at. So sorry about that. Yes, it's quite an emotional moment, if I'm honest, because it's been it's been hard work, and it's been a work of. Thank you. Don't feel bad about taking 10 years. No, God, no, no, God. I mean, to be honest, there was a long time where I thought this wasn't going to get finished. To be honest with you, that it was so normally when I write a book, it tends to end up around the 120,000 word, 300-page mark. This one, it's about 270,000 words. It's the biggest thing I've ever written. It wasn't meant to be this. I knew it was going to be slightly bigger when I started it. I didn't realise it was going to become the behemoth that it is. But I do think it is a bigger story, and it's about the end of the world. And there are moments where I show that happening. So, yeah. So I'm just going to run this through Grammarly, because that's the final little bit of my process, is to add all the commas and bits and pieces. Sorry, this is very boring to watch, because basically it just tells me to add or remove commas, and I go OK, but then that'll leave that signed off, which will be lovely. So let's open up Grammarly. Let's drop chapter 43 in. Okay. And I'm also really hungry. I haven't eaten yet, so. Okay, losing. How many suggestions have I got? 99. It's all going to be bloody commas. Nothing so far plagiarism, but the smell is pretty bad. Someone or something thing died in here. That's right. When I'm going to put he was, and that is grammatically slightly better. And no, that doesn't need a comma there. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a fair comment. The skin of woman was intact. No, it's definitely the woman. It does make some silly suggestions sometimes. Yeah, that's fine. Which he laid on. Yeah, that's fair. Right, I'm just going to. He looked at the writing. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And that's going to ask me to take. Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. To pause for breath. I suppose the chance of being at a precise moment something falls off is rather remote. Yeah, that's speech, so I'm going to leave as it is. Soon, yeah. There's no point in distressing yet. No, that's a fair comment. I'm going to lose the literal. Yeah, fair enough. It started to. That should say breathe, shouldn't it? Yeah, that's fair enough. Yep. That doesn't need a comma there. That's fine. That's fine. Oh. No. Yep. Yeah, that's fair. Has that done that? That's better. Yep, that's fine. That's fine. Nearly there. Sorry, this is the boring bit. Oh dear, right. I've done that a couple of times. I saw Adrian as a drain. Nearly there. Yes. And typing accurately is as hard. That's fine. That's also fine. And that's true. I'm going to lose that really. She walked to the front door and looked outside to make sure that nobody was outside. That's probably a better way of saying that. Especially if I spell outside correctly. Yep. No, that's it getting confused. And then, yeah, that's fair enough. There we go. That's that done. So let's download that. And copy the altered version back into my proper document. So copy. Does something weird with the formatting. So what I have to do is I have to paste it into a document that doesn't really use that formatting first. Like in this case, just notes, and then Wow. Right, so all copy. Let's just, because what I want to do, as well as moving that into the edited bit, I've been compiling a document of the whole book. And let's just sort out the formatting there. There we go. So there we go. My first word count for for this version of the book comes in at 273,712. As I say, I normally write about 125,000, so it's a lot longer. Wowza. So there we go. Second draft finished. So for anybody who's interested, the way the process for me anyway works now is I will be sending the, well, firstly, why is my screen, my button's not working? Oh well, I'm just going to have to crash a bit of software and reload it because I'm unable to change the view you can see, and you don't need to see the rest of the screen. So as soon as I can get this working again, I will change it so that all you can see is pretty short then, yeah. Right then, let's go there. That's what I wanted to do. Right. So, yeah, what I'm going to do now is I will change that. So I've got a completed version. I've got like a compiled version of the text all in one document. I'm going to format it using Word rather than Pages into a book. And I'm going to use either KDP or Lulu to physically print me a copy. Because what I find is, as part of my sign-off, I like to physically read it as a book, because there are things I will have missed on the screen that I will pick up when I do it that way. So that's what I shall do next, and I'll probably do that later today. I've got a few other things I need to do today because I need to get my arse in gear if I'm going to go away tonight. But yeah, so I will get it physically formatted and sent to me as an actual book. I will read that. There will be a few little changes I will make as a result of that, and then a physical copy or an electronic copy, depending on their preference, will go out to my beta readers. I've got 3 at the moment, and a couple more, at least 3 more I'm going to ask. So Bow Street Society has just made a comment on here, is one of them. We tend to read each other's books quite a lot, to be honest. So she's written, or is in the process of writing, a really, really good series called the Bow Street Society, and it's, hang on, weirdly I was tidying the other day, and she's written 7 books so far in her series, and that's what they look like. As you can see, they're getting longer. So that one, the first one, is a little bit smaller than that one, the 7th one. They're absolutely cracking. So they're a series of Victorian murder mysteries set in the year 1896 and 1897. It's a series, so there's individual murder mysteries in each book, but there's an ongoing storyline. So honestly, the best thing to do if you're going to read them is to start at book 1, The Case of the Curious Client by T.G. Campbell. They're available from Amazon, and there's also more information on Tani's website, which is bowstreetsociety.com. But I recommend them, they're really good. So yes, I've been a beta reader on these from book 5. And I also did a bit of beta reading on the 3rd editions of books 1 and 2. So the only ones I've had no beta reading involvement with at all are these 2 here. No coincidence that they're the best ones. No, that's not true, actually. Every time she does a new one, I think it's the best one. So that's a sign of a good series. So yes, I recommend those. So Tani, Bow Street Society on there, will be one of my beta readers. As will, I'm a great beta. I sometimes am. To be honest with you, it's easy with you because I like what you do. So most of my, I've never had to say, well, that doesn't work and that's awful. It's much easier to be a beta reader on something you generally like than it is to be a beta reader on something you think is bloody awful. So, and I will never think your stuff is bloody awful because I know there are sometimes where you don't think the readers are going to like what a character does or what happens to a character, but I think you've got enough of a sense of who your characters are. Well, no, I don't think. I know you've got enough of a sense of who your characters are to be able to, for things that happen, for them to make sense. So So yeah, so that's the next bit of my process. So I've got Bow Street Society. There will be one of them, a couple of friends of mine, and there's a couple of people in our reading group that you've suggested I approach, which I'm going to do. And there's a friend of mine from work who's read both of my other books and enjoyed them. So I'm going to ask her too, which could leave me with 6 people. If anybody else is interested who is watching now, I'm happy to have beta readers from outside my immediate circle of friends. However, it has to be a physical copy. I will not be sending any electronic copies to anybody I don't know, for a reason that Tiny pointed out to me, that it would be very easy if I send somebody a PDF or a Word document for somebody to publish it themselves on Amazon, whereas if it's just a physical book, it will be harder to do that. So if there's anybody watching now, of which there are still remarkably 8 of you, thank you so much. If anybody is interested, so let me tell you what the story's about, basically. So the story is about it's about the fact that trees are not very happy with what we're doing to the planet. So you may know that trees have a way of talking to each other. They use a fungal strand called mycelia to do rudimentary forms of communication. It's normally, help, I need some, there's another tree of a different species blocking my light. I'm struggling to photosynthesize enough sugar to keep me alive. Can I have some help? And they'll divert resources. That's what really happens. It does other things as well. But so the story is, well, what if every tree is actually really, really smart and they're having a conversation with each other that goes something along these lines? We don't like what the human race is doing to the planet's atmosphere and the pollution it's causing. So we're going to give them an ultimatum. Sort your shit out, humanity, or we'll stop breathing for 2 or 3 years. We'll survive, you won't. And that's basically what this story is about. So my main character, Ronnie, was literally created by the trees as an ambassador to effectively work between us and them. There are hundreds of ambassadors across the planet. I'm not trying to make out that Ronnie has got to talk to every government in the world. So they've set up this thing. It's taken about 300 years to arrange, but they've set up a thing where every single government is going to be spoken to simultaneously by an ambassador. So there's hundreds of ambassadors, because I mean, they've got more than one for America, for example, because as well as going at federal level, I think they, I don't know if it's one per state, but they certainly do talk to all the state administrators and stuff as well. But obviously my book is set in the UK, so we've got 4 ambassadors in the UK, one for Scotland, one for Wales, and one for the whole of Ireland, and one for England. Ronnie, my main character, is the English ambassador. Mackenzie, one of my other main characters, is the Scottish ambassador. The story isn't set in Ireland, so we never really, I think we find out what their name is, but we never meet them. And the same, the Welsh people are doing their own thing as well, so we don't really meet them in the story. But you may have noticed that I have called the 3 settlements that the people are living in New London, New Edinburgh, and New Birmingham. The one was originally called New Cardiff, and then I thought, well, no, because the Welsh lot will have created a settlement that they'll probably call New Cardiff, so it makes more sense if the 3rd settlement is named after the 2nd biggest English city. But anyway, so it's been a labour of love. I wrote the first little bit of it, the first sort of 200,000 words, relatively quickly from memory, but then COVID happened and I stopped writing it in 2020 at some point and didn't properly pick it up again until 2023. And between those 2 times, I changed my writing model. So I used to write the whole thing and then edit the whole thing, which meant that first edit was a horrible job. So one thing Bow Street Society, Tani on here, suggested to me was switching to a write edit model. Now, because I hadn't even looked at this book for 3 years, it made sense to firstly read it in detail. And secondly, it also made sense to actually edit it as I went. So between January 23 and I think it was July 24, I read and edited the first 31 chapters, and I think 31 became 32 because there was one chapter that was so long and had a natural break in it that created a little mini cliffhanger that I thought was worth exploiting. So yeah, it became 32 chapters. And once I'd finished editing those, I then in July last year started writing the remaining chapters, and I finished that in March, April, can't remember. Can't remember. I then took a few weeks off to sign off the final version of a different project called Still Life, which I'm very pleased with and in the process of putting together. No, I'm lying. I need to put together a submissions package for it. Start sending it off to agents and stuff. And then as soon as I'd signed that off properly, I then started on the second draft of this. And it hasn't taken me that long, actually, because I made a series of notes, but most of the things I needed to change were kind of cosmetic. So there's a character that is quite crucial in the last 5 or 6 chapters that came out of nowhere. So I wanted to signal his existence before then. And actually, there was a character that one of my main characters would often converse with, who worked for the same, basically the company, the charity the trees had set up, who was his liaison. And I kind of thought, well, I've got one character here, and then suddenly I've got another character here. So firstly, let's merge them. Let's make those 2 characters the same character, and then create a little bit of a backstory for them as well. So that was all done in the second draft. That was the main thing. I made one of my characters a vegan because it totally made sense they would be vegan looking at their background. And yeah, that was it basically. There wasn't that much I needed to do. So the second draft, version 1, is now done. Version 2 of the second draft will be the one that's a result of me reading through the physical copy. And then that'll be the signed off. So we're almost signed off, but not quite the second draft. So I'll read the physical copy, and if I need to make any alterations, then I will. And then, so before August, it will go out to my beta readers, and then I'll give them 3 months to read it. Obviously, if they do it quicker than that, fantastic. And based on that feedback, I will then do what will hopefully be the third and final draft of Empress of the Trees. Now, what I will do when I do that, even if a chapter doesn't need any alteration at all as a result of the feedback from the beta readers, I will still read through every single chapter again, ready to sign it off. So it'll be, depending on what comes back, it could be quite a quick process, it could be quite a short process. I think this has taken me April, May, June, July, about 3 months to sign off. Yeah, I gave myself 3 months. That's right. I gave myself, but it's only actually taken me 2 and a bit, actually. So it's possible that the third and hopefully final draft will take as long. We shall see. Anyway, thank you to everybody who raided in, especially I can't Intoxication 5077. Thank you so much. And everybody that raided in, that was really good of you. There's actually quite a lot of you watching now still. So what I might do, if you will bear with me a moment, is I might just have a look to see if there's any other interesting writing streams going on. And if there are, I am going to raid into them. Let's just have a quick look on my screen. So hang on, you're not going to see what I'm seeing, but let's have a look. Oh, how do I follow channels, live channels? How do I follow? I'm not very good at this. I don't do this very often. Writing. Is it called writing or writers? Writing and reading is the name of the current. So who have we got? Don't know them. Don't know them. Don't know them. Oh, that's me. May contain sexual themes. Sorry about that. There was a little bit in that one, actually. I can't see anybody I know, so I'm going to try that one. That's just a random one I've picked. I will pick one that's the same language as me. That seems to be a good idea. So let me just work out how to do this. It's been a while since I've done this. So they're called Words for the Horde. Let me, oh no, that's the wrong button. Bear with me, sorry. So how do I do this? I need to, no, Stream Manager. There we go. And that's the raid button, and that's words. What's it doing? Words for the Horde, right. So, is that working? No, I'd rather word into a... Excellent. Okay, raiding now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be watching words from the Horde for a bit. Take care. Much appreciated for the raid, guys. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.